He can't take a nap. He's got too many women to cash app later.
That sounds really weird out of context. Really weird out of context.
Even if you were to put it in the context, it's still
okay.
fucking weird.
Now I have to. The whole point, the cash apping was for someone, an internet personality. It was for an internet personality to shout out the show as like a promotional tool. This was not me cash apping just a girl for whatever reason. It was for a shout out for our podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to S1E1, the show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if it's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about According to Jim. According to Jim went 182 episodes over 8 seasons on ABC. Today we're going to be talking about episode 1, which is called Pilot, originally airing October 3rd, 2001. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me as always, the boys, Gordo, Nick, Joe, and not yet by Sleepy McGee Ferg, who's not here yet, so maybe he'll be joining us later. What's going on, guys?
Heyo.
Hello.
Are you thought out yet, Daddy?
That's not the one I thought you were going to go with.
Toga 2000, which is like my favorite Simpsons Jim Belushi reference.
Who picked this show?
Nick.
I
Nick picked
did.
it.
Bro.
Little backstory. This, for some reason, whatever channel my mom watches when she's in the kitchen, this show is always on, and I always catch myself watching it. I've gotten a few laughs out of it, but the weird thing is I think it's on TBS or I don't know, one of these weird channels, and I don't think they have the rights to even a full season of the show, because it's always like the same 8 to 10 episodes playing. So I was interested to see the pilot of this show, because I always see like the same part of that series, and I wanted to give it a shot because I don't hate it. It's not the best show, even when I'm watching it there. It's not like the best show I've ever seen, but I did want to see where the ethos of this show came from, and now I wish I didn't. So here we are.
That's weird because it can't be a music rights issue because all the music is actually Jim Belushi for the whole show.
I don't know. I mean, I could be making that up too. I could just be catching it at weird times where it's a replay again, but yeah, I've seen like the same episode 3 times over there.
I was shocked to see that it was 182 episodes in 8 seasons. I
knew it had a long run.
It just was a show that existed forever, but it was never like popular. It just existed.
Again, though, this comes up a few times, and I thought about it with this show. This show started when we were freshmen in high school, and it ended when we were like 22, right? So it literally was on, and probably pre-syndication, literally the amount of, like, any night we wouldn't be home. I mean, like, that's the era of, like, from 14 to 22, you're either out or drinking or at friends' houses or whatever. Like, we missed a lot of shows by just always being out doing something.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
If this show started 2 years earlier, I think we would probably have known it a lot more, because when you're 12 years old or whatever, you're not out as late, you're not out as often, right? You're just kind of home watching TV on a Saturday or whatever in the summertime, you know?
We make that point often, and actually, I was just looking, this premiered 2 days before the premiere of Reba, which we actually just covered
really?
a few weeks ago. So, yeah, just, 2 days apart, these two shows, both named Pilot, premiered October 2001.
Weirdly, according to Jim, was not pushed back again because of 9/11, but Reba was?
Reba was. Well, maybe that was always the scheduled date for this one? I don't know.
Maybe. They probably should go back and not call those episodes Pilot, though.
Okay. Anyways, so according to Jim, Nick, you already kind of explained you picked it and why. Gordo, Joe, what's your knowledge of the show kind of leading into this?
I'll go. Okay.
I was waiting for you to go.
I was waiting for you. Sorry, buddy.
Okay.
I never saw this show. It was something I knew existed, and it feels like the kind of thing that was on maybe like right after Yes Dear or something, in the middle of the afternoon or whatever. But I will say, I don't know what you guys are going to say, and if Ferg shows up, I know his opinion on it. I think people give short shrift to Jim Belushi. I really like Jim Belushi.
I agree. That was my other thing about this show. I feel like people are always holding him up against John.
That's not fair.
But Jim is funny. Like, I mean, I don't think this pilot really shows that, but what did I just see him in? He was in a movie I saw recently. It was an older movie. I'll think of it later. But, what?
Was it Thief?
No. It was,
Thief is one of my favorite movies of all time, and he's amazing in that.
Were you watching his reality show from a couple years ago, Growing Belushi, about how he grows marijuana now?
No,
I did not know
was
that
not it.
existed, but that makes all of the sense in the world.
Yeah, no, that wasn't it.
But yeah, Jim Belushi, right? Like, he had his own career. He did his own things. It's not fair that he had a brother that was super popular and super funny before him. Like, John Belushi was great. He gave us Blues Brothers, Animal House, Fear on Saturday Night Live.
It's tough to not compare the two.
Right, but we get Thief out of him, Trading Places, Red Heat, Canadian Bacon. Like, there are all these amazing things that he's part of. And again, that great Simpsons
Part
joke.
of, but not the reason they're good, though.
Well, I mean, he's like probably number 2 build in Thief. I mean, he's like, that's like a two-hander, and he's James Caan's like sidekick in that movie. So I mean, like, he's in some stuff. And The Substitute is a great movie, and he's the lead in that. I think there's like 9 sequels to that too.
I can see that.
Anyway, just coming out to say, if you ever listen to this, Jim Belushi, I am a fan, and I think people should give Jim Belushi a lot more credit.
Well, I guess, and just to tack on, I've definitely seen the show. Nick, like you said, it's one of those shows that was heavily syndicated, so it was on often. I knew the basic characters and everything. I couldn't tell you much of, if anything, that's ever happened in the show. I've just been aware of it and have seen it. Yeah, I don't know. I do think I fall into that.
Dumb and Dumber he's in.
Jim Belushi?
Yeah, he's,
The original Dumb and Dumber?
yeah, hold on.
I don't think so.
Are you sure it's not Dumb and Dumber?
Or Dumb and Dumber 2?
Just
T-O-O?
what the hell was it?
He's in a bunch. No, I looked up his IMDb earlier. It's an animated short. Like, he does a lot of animation.
All right, well, anyways, to go back, I do feel like I'm one of those people that maybe compares him to his brother too much.
Little
because
Shop of Horrors, that's what it was.
I grew up.
Oh.
All right, I'll just finish later. Anything else? Any other shows you want to just shout out while I'm speaking?
I'll let you start talking, and then I'll interrupt you again.
Okay, well, yeah, so I've always been a gigantic John Belushi fan, especially growing up. So I think I can't help myself but compare the two of them. And John Belushi is just one of those guys that even though he was a little before our time, was one of those formative guys who established what comedy meant to me. So he was so pivotal that then when it's like Jim, I think at the end of the day, you can't help but compare. And listen, Jim isn't as funny as his brother. He just isn't. It doesn't mean he has no talent, but it's just really tough to not be in the shadow of someone who is like as iconic as John Belushi. We should get right into the episode now. So
Oh, that's okay, guys. No one wants to hear Gordo's opinion.
well, I think I did talk. I waited until I just assumed that you would win. I guess I'm sorry.
I didn't. No, I've seen the show. It's
Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber. No, I've seen this show before. It's a very generic show. We'll get into it, but just like you, I can't name anything major on the show or anything like that. But
Other than the episode we just watched, if you were to like hold a gun to my head and say, name a single scene from According to Jim, any episode, I'd be like, goodbye.
I know, yeah.
I kind of like that, though. As a person who just loves sitcoms, who like they bring me to like a weird, comfortable, happy place, this stays in the lane of sitcom. Quippy dad, weird stuff with the kids goes on. He's not quite, able to handle it. The sister and brother-in-law are all there. They've got the wacky neighbors thing going on. Like, it's just sort of a by-the-book sitcom. And you can say that's good or you can say that's bad. But what it is like comforting if you like sitcoms. It's mindless sitcom. And I appreciate when we watch shows like this because you can take a wild swing, and we've seen a lot of wild swings in a lot of these shows. I bring you back to the gobbling bird colonel in Danger 5. That was my favorite thing ever. Or you can be
You can go back if you want to watch Danger 5 or listen to us cover Danger 5, by the way.
But a show like Reba or something is similar that we just mentioned, right? Where like I can name a lot of scenes from that show, but essentially it's that here's the issue that we build around it, and this is essentially a family sitcom. Wacky things are going on the side. It's just comforting to me.
Yeah, it's very mindless. It's very generic, basic sitcom. Basic sitcom formula.
I want to start off, before we get into the episode itself, by just reading the one line that's the description of the show on IMDb. Not the episode description, but just for the show itself on the main page. It's listed as a television show centered around a macho everyman, his loving wife, and their 3 children. When I think of Jim Belushi, I'm like, well, there's a macho everyman, but
I get every man out of him, but he doesn't seem super macho in this episode.
yeah, he's not super macho, but he is like a guy's guy, like a, kind of typical. He plays a typical dad role in here.
Yeah, I mean, he likes drinking and sitting on the couch reading a paper. Like, it's very like dad on sitcom. He has like the sort of tropes of it.
Right.
Before we get into the episode, though, I just wanted to bring up, did anybody look into who created this show?
I did, actually. I did a pretty good deep dive on that.
Very interesting backstory of a couple of these people. And I'm a little mad that Ferg's not on the episode right now, because one of the creators, aside from like being a writer, he wrote the episode of Ellen where she comes out of the closet.
Jonathan Stark?
Yeah, a huge episode. But he was also in like Fright Night and a bunch of it. House 2, like all these 80s horror movies. Like, Ferg's not here to be like, yo, horror nerd, we're talking about fucking Fright Night. Come on, man.
Well, since you brought it up, I guess we should talk about it a minute before we get into the episode itself. So the show is created by a writing duo, Jonathan Stark and Tracy Newman, and they pretty much have followed their whole careers together. Tracy Newman, who is one of the founding members of the Groundlings, which is an iconic improv comedy group that pretty much is like a farm system for everyone who's ever been on SNL.
To this day. That's still every year they go to the Groundlings and do the showcases, and that's how they get new cast members for SNL more often than not.
Yeah, and they've worked together on a bunch of shows. Like they did Drew Carey, they worked on The Nanny, Ellen, Hiller and Diller, which is a show I forgot existed, which I kind of want to add to the list.
Wow, I completely
so
forgot
obscure.
about that show.
So all shows that are better than this.
You're judging by a pilot, though, and the pilots of those shows could be bad too.
I don't know anything that happens going forward because it's so easy to forget.
And Joe, this far in, well over 70 episodes in, I think you should know the premise of our show is to judge shows by their pilot. So, I mean,
you created our concept, Joe.
No, that's what I'm saying, though. But Gordo, if you can tell me what happened on the Hiller and Diller pilot and tell me why it's better than this one, I will send you $10 to Cash App, and you can deny it and drink an iced coffee.
Nothing like it. But anyways, I don't think I've ever heard of Hiller and Dillon.
Hiller and Diller.
Well, it's not the name of the show, so that makes more sense then.
They were, Tracy Newman, I at least know. I don't know if they both together. I think so. But they worked on, I mentioned it before, Bob Newhart was on a show that was just called Bob, where he was a cartoonist. And I referenced that in the past because I knew there was a third show where he was Bob.
Yeah.
And it was short-lived, but yeah, she worked on that. And she actually, modern day, has gotten away from writing, and she's, I guess, prominent in the folk music scene.
Well, a couple things you didn't mention. One of the things that comes towards the folk music thing, she was one of the original members of the New Christy Minstrels, which, if you've ever seen A Mighty Wind, the Christopher Guest movie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know the band who's like the new Main Street Singers? They're a joke take on the New Christy Minstrels, who were like a 15-piece group who would do like This Land Is Your Land and everything.
Okay.
But also her sister is Laraine Newman, who was an original SNL cast member, so she worked with John Belushi.
Oh, okay,
so
that makes
probably
sense
how
then.
and the Groundlings, they were all from Chicago, so they probably knew each other since they were like 20.
That makes a lot of sense now. And that would definitely make sense why she, if anyone was like, we need to create a show around Jim Belushi, I guess we could, now we have the ties, we can figure out how that probably happened.
A lot of lives lived, though. Like professional musician, Groundlings founder, writer, creator of sitcoms. This woman's lived
what
a
like
lot
an
of lives.
interesting person. So let's get into the episode itself, right? So the first scene, you just see Jim sitting in he's sitting in his chair in the living room, and his wife walks in, Cheryl. And it was like, oh, I thought you were playing with the girls. He's like, I am. I'm playing Frozen Guy. And the only way that I can unfreeze is if they play in the yard, which he said sounds a lot like his game Hammock Guy.
I want to play Hammock Guy so badly.
Hammock Guy is essentially the same show, only outside, and they have to play in the house.
Not to be confused with Banana Hammock Guy.
Oh, I'm that guy every day.
A+ for creativity right there.
Gordo, you were really against this show. You were coming in this with some serious anger, huh?
I don't think that was sarcasm. I think he was being
wasn't
serious.
sarcasm. I would actually play Frozen Man.
Are you playing Frozen Man? Because you've got no inflection right now. I don't know what's happening.
I've said this. I actually think I said it in like last week's episode. Gordo comes in with such dry delivery sometimes. It's really tough to know what angle he's coming in from.
You are like reading a text message, Gordo. There's no context to any tone, and you just don't know how to take it.
For so long, Gordo's humor is exclusively gifted through memes, so now he doesn't know how to deliver it through speech.
Know how to speak.
Yeah.
No, I'm being serious though. I enjoy Jim Belushi's game, and I would play that myself if I were a father.
It seems like a clever, lazy dad game. I mean, I don't have any children myself, but being an uncle, I understand having a lively child around and how how easy it is to just be like, okay, I'm playing, like, oh, hide and seek. It's like, I'm going to count to 100.
Yes.
Anything to like not run around for 2 minutes.
I was frozen today.
My uncles used to play this game. Used to like not play this game, but like they had a thing that was like a hammock guy where it would always be like, yeah, after this beer. Because when you're a kid, you're like, okay, cool, but you don't know, just get another beer, right? So they're like, I'll still get some beer in here, like 3 hours later. And I've just adapted that to my niece and nephew now. It's just like, after this beer, I'll do it, man. Just like, wait 3 hours. I have watched, I heard someone play hammock guy once. Nick, in an apartment that you and I both lived in at separate times, one of our roommates, I won't say his name, obviously, but we had like just moved in, and Gordo was there plenty as well. I'm like, hey, I'm going to call the cable companies and figure all this stuff out. It's like, okay, I'm going to go out back and set up a hammock. I was like, okay. So what I assumed he was doing was setting up a hammock in the backyard. What he didn't tell me he was doing was setting up a hammock and using the posts of the like 120-year-old dilapidated New England triple deckers porch to set up a hammock. So I'm like on the fucking phone with like Verizon or whatever, being like, what packages do you offer for cable? And I just hear like, what? Thud. Like running out. Then he just like cracked one of the beams and the whole thing fell. I can't believe he didn't take the porch down with him. But now it's this hammock guy or anything about a hammock. I either think of the Hammock District in The Simpsons or him just eating shit so hard and being like, why would you do that on a porch?
I mean, A+ for creativity.
A for effort.
A for effort. Well, he was also involved in the time where he and another one of our friends and ex-roommates were outside smoking weed, but it was wintertime, so they plugged their space heaters in on the porch and literally fried like all of the electricity in the hallway going out to the back porch. And there was like burn marks up the wall and everything, which was a great moment. But I was like, what were you guys doing? It's like, we plugged the space heaters in outside. Like, you realize the sentence you just said, right?
I bet you all didn't think you were going to get 2 porch stories this early.
I got a lot of porch stories. Porches are fun.
The kids walk in and, are you thawed out yet, Daddy? And he's going, rrr, rrr, play harder. I'm so cold. So they run back out and it's like, then we get to the wife who's now sitting down and he's asking about dinner, but he's like, oh, you better ask your wife because Frozen Gal is going to sit her ass down and read the paper. Nick, you've mentioned this before in other shows. This is a show that I have a hard time seeing them as a couple and going, this makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, even still, like, she's much more attractive even in the later seasons. She's got, like, a weird haircut in this.
I think that was deliberate. I think my guess
They tried
was
to dumb her down a little bit.
I think they cut her hair like that to give her a little more age because she is a very attractive woman. And I think when I looked it up, I don't have the exact number, but I think they're about 14, 15 years apart.
She had literally just come off of doing Melrose Place, where she was like, you know, a sex symbol for a super long time. If you guys haven't seen it, I forgot this existed and it came back out and like sort of circled around when Norm Macdonald died. But right when she left Melrose Place, Courtney Thorne Smith is her name. Right when she left Melrose Place, she was on Conan O'Brien, and she was on at the same time as, like, you know, Norm Macdonald was on, and he stays on the seat. And the like 8 minutes that she's on, I don't know if Norm is drunk or not, but he just roasts her and does not stop. And she's out there promoting the movie Chairman of the Board with Carrot Top. And Norm Macdonald's just like, hey, you left Melrose Place to be in Chairman of the Board? Like, the very last thing of it is, Conan O'Brien's like, I don't know, we get one more joke in you, Norm? I bet you don't. And he's like, yeah, they should call it Chairman of the Board, B-O-R-E-D. And everybody just fucking loses it, including her, where she's just so depressed. She's like, you're ruining my movie. It's like the funniest 8 minutes ever. I miss Norm Macdonald so much.
If we can find that clip, I'll try to put it on our stories on Instagram, which you can follow us at S1E1 Pod. So S1E1 Pod, follow Instagram. I'll try to get that up on the stories at some point this week.
There's a guy that he had a sitcom, right? Norm Macdonald?
Yeah, a great
called
sitcom.
Norm.
We have to cover that.
On the ever-growing list, yeah.
Yeah, ever-growing list. He had like a wiener dog that I think he named, the name was Wiener Dog on the show. Jackie from Roseanne, I forget the actor's name. I hate that I can't think of it right now, but she was like one of his bosses or something maybe. I remember watching it when it was new and it was funny.
He had such a great comedy that was so like iconic to himself. He was just, his brand of humor was just very much a staple of him. And things like what you just mentioned on the late night show is just such a Norm Macdonald thing to do. And there's like these compilation clips of times he's being interviewed and on late night shows, and he was just so hilarious and had such an unique brand of humor that really fit him so well.
One of the most genuinely funny people of all time.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the clips of him? I think it was the Bob Saget roast.
Oh, yeah.
Where he just
he just took like an old book of like old timey jokes.
Yeah. And it's like the funniest fucking thing ever. And he doesn't swear or anything like that.
He just always would go for it, whether it was going to be funny or not. And it always ended up being funny, even if it wasn't funny.
Yeah, and I'm just glad that we were able to take a quick pause and somehow find a way in this episode about, according to Jim, to talk about somebody funny. So,
man, you're just throwing shade.
I mean, listen, again, I mean, he is every macho man, but so that's kind of where that scene ends. And from there we get to the real opening. Well, there's the intro first. The intro first is very quick. And I don't know if that was just the version I saw, because I don't remember a longer intro. It's just kind of a quick little bluesy intro with like him green screen sitting on a couch in front of like just white nothing.
And that's him honking on Bobo because he's playing that's his band doing it. I think we mentioned it earlier, but they like even put out an album of like all the songs from the TV show.
He had a lot of musical credits that I saw on IMDb. I didn't realize he was so musically inclined.
I think it was all because it was all tied to the show, so he had so much music linked to this 8-year sitcom that obviously there's going to be a lot of music credits.
I think before this too, he toured, he might still, but he toured with like the House of Blues house band, like the original House of Blues in Chicago. That's who did the background music. He's like playing with them. So I think he like was doing stuff with them for years, maybe, because I think maybe he had a hand in opening it with Dan Aykroyd when they first started opening them.
Oh, I didn't even know Dan Aykroyd like was like a big part of the creation of the House of Blues.
Oh yeah.
That makes so much sense now. Like putting it all two and two together though.
What's crazy is that House of Blues now is just a venue. Like it's just a rock club. It's a big rock club. I don't like it or hate it. It's just a standard, typical rock club.
It exists, yeah. There's not too much unique about it. They all kind of have like that little side restaurant area, but you don't really go there. You just kind of go for the shows.
Even in the like early 2000s, late 90s, they used to be very different. The one that was in Boston was actually like in an alleyway in Harvard Square. It was really small, and they would do like blues brunch. Like you couldn't do like shows there, but like, you know, if like an old blues musician came to town or something, that's where they'd play. It's just weird to see that it evolved into like a Live Nation venue that you just go to see like whatever fucking band at now.
The one in Boston, you know, for those of you listening who, you know, aren't privy to our area, you know, used to be a club called Avalon. And actually, and it had there was a place next to it named Axis, and they took over both spots.
And Karma Club.
It engulfed Karma Club as well?
Karma Club was part of the same, it was like 3 in a row.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that, but I didn't know if that was part of the new House of Blues or not. I know Axis and Avalon for sure.
Yeah, they bought it all the way up to Bill's Bar, I think.
Yeah. So I remember being excited and being like, oh, cool. Like, this seems like a cool, like, they're going to revamp and do something cool here with these spots. So we used to go to shows at Avalon all the time. Avalon was one of the bigger venues for bands we liked in the area. I remember going to the first House of Blues show and being like, it's the same venue. They didn't change anything. They put a couple, like, fake paintings on the wall, like near the bars, and that was about it. It was just the same exact venue.
And I just dislike those types of venues so much too. You're not comfortable. It's like $11 for a beer. And like, as somebody who plays in bands, like they charge the merch, like they charge you a percentage of your merch and everything too. So you know when you go in there, like the band's getting screwed too. Like it's just so...
How do they enforce that though?
They have somebody there selling and they basically take everything off.
I'm sure depending on how big the band is, they might have leverage on their own though. Probably.
Yeah, a bigger band probably gets a better percentage, but like I've got a friend who does that on the side where he does like, he'll be the merch guy for whatever band, like the Offspring he did the other last time they were here, right? So like that's what happens. They hire somebody independently to do it so that they can keep track of it. But usually the band seems to be pretty, like all the bands seem to be nice and they're like giving you a t-shirt and seem to be like very friendly, which makes me happy, you know, that they're not like, well, at least they're mad at the club, not the person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I appreciate. Taking some weird side routes tonight on this episode.
Yeah.
Why don't we just get to the green light or cancel, Jay, and then we'll just shoot the shit.
We have a lot of episode to cover, so I guess let's get right into it. So the first scene outside of the intro, they're all in the like kitchen area. We talk about sets a lot. This house, it was shot kind of weird. It didn't look like a standard easy set. It obviously wasn't a real house, but it was very unique in a way, the way they shot it at times. The camera angles, it looked like this hybrid. It looked like they just like shaved the facing off of an actual house and shot from inside.
I'll tell you the weirdest part of this set is it is very rare to have the living room not immediately go into the kitchen. and theirs is living room, dining room, kitchen, which is super strange. And the only show I can think of that actually did this was the original Fresh Prince house. If you remember, they changed houses sets at one point.
Yeah, before it became like a more white modern house, like all the white interior.
Like the first episode when Will's doing like the beatbox on the water glasses, like that's
that was their pilot, right?
Yeah, that's in the dining room that's in between the living room and the kitchen. It's the only other TV show I can think of that did it like that. It usually always goes living room right into the kitchen.
All in the Family as well.
Well, it was like part of the living room, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like one big space, I guess. Yeah, it's usually something you see in like apartment TV shows, not house TV shows.
Right, yeah.
Red Dwarf didn't have that.
Thank you.
Yes. And neither did Homeboys in Outer Space.
Exactly.
Both episodes you can check back if you want to go back and listen to some old episodes if you're just catching up with us now.
I highly suggest listening to our episode about Homeboys in Outer Space, and highly suggest not watching the garbage 22 minutes that was that fucking nightmare of a TV show.
In any event, everyone's in the kitchen. There's a whole family. So we see Jim, his wife, their 3 kids who are all very young. I think the oldest of the 3 kids is the one who's going into kindergarten. So for perspective of age, she's what, like 5?
I think that's right, yeah.
So they're all in the kitchen, and we find out it's going to be Ruby, who's the oldest daughter's first day of kindergarten. And this is when the aunt walks in, Dana. I'm sorry, is Claire the name of the wife? I'm sorry.
Claire is the wife, yeah. Dana
Claire,
is the
all right,
sister.
so it's
the wife.
Yeah, so it's Claire's sister. So Claire's sister, Dana, walks in. And right away I was like, I know who this, like her face was so familiar and I couldn't place it. And then it was, for me, unless you caught it from something else, but Father of the Bride.
That's what it was for me too, yeah.
She's the daughter
No,
of
you
Father
know
of the
what?
Bride.
I never figured it out. I can't figure out. I was hoping you were going to help me there, and that wasn't it, though.
You never saw Father of the Bride?
I don't think I have, no.
Have you seen Father of the Bride 2? Because she's also in the sequel.
Yeah, so I have seen that one, though, yeah.
But that's where I knew her from.
Can I just say that they never established that she is sisters? Like, I didn't get it.
Nope, they did. They absolutely did. She immediately walks in and talks about getting a call from their brother, which makes her sister.
I agree with both of you, though, on this one. I feel like they said
I do too.
But
Yeah.
I got a little lost on the brother, because there's a scene coming up here where he's like, she's great in bed, and I was like, whoa, what happened here? And it's like, he talks a lot, and I was like, wait, is the brother? Like, I got lost in some of the dialogue, trying to figure out who everybody was.
There's a world where you could, if you missed it, you could think that Andy and Dana were both Jim's siblings, if you miss it. Like, I guess the episode would have worked either way. If they were Jim's siblings instead of Claire's.
I mean, I watch this episode very analytically with 4 pages of notes, which is, again, mind-boggling sometimes that we do this, but I can agree with you. I knew it was happening, but I got confused a little later on, where I was like, wait, I knew this a minute ago. So I think that maybe they didn't... I'm assuming later on in the show, like later on in the series, they make it more concrete, but...
Yeah, they just weren't very clear. So I got really, really confused about who was the brother, who was the sister, and what the hell they were even talking about. Like I said, they just didn't do a good job explaining. They just kind of made you assume that you knew.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess when she walks in, she says, like, good morning, everyone. And the reply is, like, morning, Aunt Dana. So you would assume she's the sister of one of the two, but
she's somebody's
I guess
sister.
She's one of their sisters.
She could just be a very close neighbor.
I guess, but they do call her Aunt Dana. So they...
But that's like a close enough friend can be called aunt by the kids too, though, when they're young.
Right, but in this case, it is that she's the aunt. In any event, she's talking and she's greeting the children and everything. And Ruby says that it's her first day of kindergarten. And she's like, oh, how exciting. What a big girl you are. And then Gracie, the middle child, who's, 3-ish maybe, tells her aunt, I have a vagina.
I love the pronunciation of vagina.
Vagina.
Yeah, I was going to say, this might be my favorite sitcom vagina saying, aside from Peggy Hill yelling it out of the window.
And Dana says, oh, me too. That means we have to work twice as hard as a man to earn the same amount of money. And it cuts to like this reaction shot, which I meant to mention this earlier. This is a 22-minute episode. I think if you were to shave out every reaction shot where someone said something and they cut to someone reacting to it, you would probably get at least 5 minutes out of the episode.
Yeah, like when Jim Belushi comes in and he's got they're like, hey, nice tie, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, maybe you guys will be in the same grade. He like very much mugs. He goes, cool. Like he like takes a beat to do it. Like, and that happens a lot in this show.
There's just so many cut to reactions, and I noticed it real early, and then after that, I couldn't not notice it every single time it happened because it was such a large chunk of the episode.
I didn't really notice it or pay attention that well, but now that you mention it, they do that a lot.
It was a ton.
I missed that. Do what a lot?
So basically, it's just nonstop reaction shots this entire episode.
Oh yeah, yep.
A lot of mugging.
Every time there's like a joke or any type of one-liner, it cuts to someone else just kind of smirking and looking at them all the time. Dana is like having a conversation with about her brother, and basically him, Andy, who we haven't met yet, and his girlfriend got into a huge fight because he broke her hairdryer. He said it was normal wear and tear. They got into a fight, blah, blah, blah. He's back in his own apartment for now. Or she's back in her own apartment, I'm sorry. And that's kind of a recurring theme throughout the episode once we finally meet Andy and his girlfriend.
Was anybody else thrown off about when you meet Andy and he's got like very short cropped hair? You're like, what are you using a blow dryer for, bud?
I get short hair. I use a blow dryer.
Maybe it wasn't on his hair.
Gord, are you blow dry?
Yeah. I do it every morning. It makes it, I have to style my hair like this. Like if you think good hair like this just comes naturally, you'd be mistaken, my friend. It's a lot of care, but you know, it dries to, it's just long enough that it's warranted because it won't dry quick enough. Do you not blow?
I could not tell you the last time I turned a blow dryer on for hair product other than I needed to dry something like glue and needed a blow dryer for it.
Yeah, that's all I've used them for.
Yeah, when I used to have like big spiky hair, like we were in high school, Gordo, you can attest to this, right? That's how you'd hairspray it and hold it out, and then you'd blow dry it to like tighten it up. But the last time I would have done that would have been probably 20 years ago.
You guys don't use a blow dryer?
No,
I just
my hair
use a
is
towel.
very short.
Yeah, I don't have long hair.
And my hair's a little longer than I like right now. I need to get a haircut, but yeah, I just towel it, and then once it's halfway dry, I usually just put a hat on.
I also work from home. I couldn't tell you the last time I've had to style my hair for anything.
Yeah,
I have a hat on almost all the time.
Yeah, same. I like if I get my hair cut, I don't wear a hat for like a month, and I'm like, my hair's too long, and then I wear a hat for 2 months and get a haircut. That's like the cycle I usually go through.
I got a haircut yesterday. I put my hat on as soon as I left. I have a hat on now. You would never know I got a haircut unless you catch like the back of my neck.
I will say though, speaking of what Nick just said about working from home, I have been toying around with the idea of having a beard again, just because I'm on calls so often. Like my job is to be on video calls, so you either have to shave or have a beard, because if you go like 3 days without shaving, you just look like a fucking asshole. You know what I mean? Like you just look scraggly and nobody trusts you. So you have to be like, you can't be like in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. You have to have something like either like the rest of us have or nothing. Like jobs don't appreciate it when you say, I'm going to grow my beard out for some reason.
Here's a real thing that happened to me when I was in my young 20s. So I used to work at a supermarket. I worked there for years, but in various different stores. And in one store I worked at, my manager hated facial hair, hated it. And at that point in my life, I used to shave my beard off all the time and just regrow it, shave it, regrow it. And I was in the midst of growing my beard back out. And he's like, you can't be scruffy at work. I'm like, well, I'm growing my beard out. He's like, well, you can either have a beard or not have a beard. I'm like, well, there's an in-between stage.
Yeah, it doesn't just magically happen.
He's like, well, you can't be scruffy at work. So legitimately, my reaction was, okay, and I took a vacation the following week, and I just grew my beard out and came back to work with a beard.
Back when you were like young and you have so little responsibilities that you'll use your vacation time for something stupid like a spite beard. Whereas now you're like, I have so little vacation time and so many things to do. I have to use it for something important, not growing facial hair to say fuck you to a boss at a minimum wage job.
You should have came back with like a Fu Manchu or something.
Yeah, if you came back like Hulk Hogan style, you'd be like, what's up, brother? Like, fuck me.
I had one at one point. But I've run the gauntlet with facial hair. But we should talk about according to Jim. So they continuing to talk about Andy's situation, and we established that the two sisters really like their brother's girlfriend, and they don't want them to be, apart because she's really good for him. So the thought is they're going to have to figure out a way to get them together. Jim's thing is, you know what we can do? Let's sleep on it, and then wake up tomorrow, and then do nothing and sleep on it again. And essentially just saying, let's mind our own business.
Which, I mean, that's the everyman aspect again, right? That's him being like,
I agreed with him. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
the fuck? Whose problem is it? It's like, why would we make our lives more difficult by getting involved in this?
And nobody wants to get involved in that stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to look at it like a little more broad. It's if they're going to break up over a hairdryer, they're probably not meant to be. They probably don't really want to be together that bad that something like that's going to cause a breakup.
These are low stakes. If she was like, look, my sister got cheated on by her boyfriend, can you talk to him? They might break up. There's kids involved, whatever. You'd be like, okay, this is serious. I should probably go have a talk with this dude or whatever, right? Like, he ran off with his secretary. You got to tell him to like, get his shit together. You'd be like, okay, not he broke a $20 Con Air and nobody wants to replace it. Instead, they're just going to break up over it, which is fucking bonkers.
Yeah, there's other shit going on if that's where they're at.
Seriously.
Right.
To be fair, if you are going to break up over a $20 Con Air hairdryer, you should probably stay broken up.
Well, yeah, that's what we're saying. It's not meant to be.
Oh.
But if you break up over a $20 Con Air Blu-ray, then you both just, one of you doesn't like a great movie.
So many times, Gordo knows what he wants to say, and he's like patiently waiting to say it. But while he's waiting to say it, is not listening to what anyone else is saying.
Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? And someone was like, Gordo, are you even paying attention?
I think it was last week's episode.
Kinda.
Yeah.
I was actually kind of paying attention, but I thought you guys were saying the opposite because you had mentioned about smacking someone.
You could sit here the entire episode, not pay attention, sit on your phone, and you are still better than Ferg because you were here, sitting here with us.
Half the battle is just showing up.
Yeah, you
Well,
woke up and you came to do the job.
I did. I actually watched the show too, which I should also get points for.
But most of you will be in for a big treat because if Ferg does wake up and joins in on this at any point in time, which he's free to, and hopefully he does, you will be privy to mumbling sleepy Ferg for the first at least half hour
For
that
those of
he's
you
awake.
who don't know, we just found this out ourselves recently. Like a newborn, Ferg takes a 3-hour nap every single day.
Every day.
So apparently it ran late or long today, so here we are.
So this scene closes out with Claire telling Jim, like, hey, can you please talk to Andy when you have a chance? And it was, she asked him, but it was one of those, well, this isn't, you're not asking, right? You're just telling me I have to. And there's a lot of these, I don't know, it was a lot of generic humor through in this episode, I felt. I think maybe one of the most generic sitcoms I think I've ever watched.
Yeah, this argument completely, and then what it turns into, which is like the whole, like, I'm gonna ask you for a blowjob later joke, which is like all of this stuff that's just so
They check all
recycled.
those boxes.
Yeah, like, and that's why it's also comforting though, right? It's not good nor bad. It's just in a lane.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's bad.
I
but
wouldn't say
is
it lands.
it's the most generic, like, of every sitcom, family sitcom with the dopey dad who's a little tubby and goofy, like maybe the most generic one with the least amount of substance. And maybe they get into it more as it evolves and there's more character development, but right here, not much, just doopy dad.
I'll tell you, in the later episodes of this show, the brother he's super funny in it, actually, and he's barely in this episode. He's at the dinner and at the work real quick.
Yeah.
But he is pretty funny. So maybe once they, rolled him into the dialogue a little bit more, it kind of turned it around or something. But
yeah, and in this, it's funny you say that because actually this is the scene where we meet him right after that, because after that kitchen scene, we cut to their work. I guess they're architects.
Yeah, I gather they're architects.
So, and that they work together. So Jim walks in and pulls out these like blueprints that Andy did. He's like, oh, anything wrong with these that you're noticing? And it's like, what? He's like, you forgot to put a door on. He's like, unless the family was born in the house, then they're not going to be able to get in or out. Like, ha ha ha.
Yeah, it's not a great joke.
You could say that was adorable.
Oh, there we are.
Waka waka.
But
So Andy apologizes and says, he's distracted and all due to the fight situation, obviously, with his girlfriend.
Hold on, I'm calling bullshit on this because you don't just draw a house plans in like a day.
that's a good point, actually. I didn't think about that because apparently the breakup had just happened and he had designed an entire house in that time.
Finishing touches. Maybe
suspect.
the door goes on last. I don't know. I've never designed a house.
To Jay's point, though, they might just be in a terrible relationship and they're always fighting, and this is just this week's argument, right? So he's like aloof and all over the place because his like home life is fucking chaotic. That's me giving the benefit of the doubt to it, but I agree with you.
Right.
If it was just in one day, I don't know if you can use like is it CAD or whatever you use to draw those things out. I don't know if you can do a whole house in a day.
I mean, I've never designed a house personally, so I can't speak to it.
Listen. I've got some Minecraft houses and I've got some Elder Scrolls Online houses that I built that were pretty dope that won competitions.
Competitions?
Yes. I was in a guild.
He beat a bunch of 7-year-olds at house building.
To be fair, they were also 30-something neckbeards like myself who specialized in playing MMOs just to buy houses just so we could deck it out.
This conversation is like when Homer's brain is like, you can stay here if you want, but I'm leaving. Like, you're just like, I don't even know what you're saying anymore.
You guys don't play the MMOs?
The fuck
Nope,
is an MMO?
moving on.
Multi-massive player online.
Cool.
The P doesn't get? Is the P silent? Is it like Pfeiffer?
MMO. Oh, MMO. Massive multiplayer online role-playing game.
That's so many more
That's
words.
way more than MMO.
MMORPG.
No, it's not. Massive multiplayer online role-playing game.
RPG was assumed, yeah. Yeah, that was all. He didn't say that before.
He just was calling it an MMO, which sounds like a healthcare plan.
Well, that's what there's MMOs and then there's MMORPGs. There is a difference. But this is so totally irrelevant to what we're talking about.
Yes, has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Yeah.
It's not, because you guys said, have you ever designed a house? And I said, yes, I have, in the Elder Scrolls Online.
Am I in like a loop? Am I in like a horror movie dreamscape loop right now I can't get out of?
So, to close out the conversation, Andy mentions that he's thrown up twice over this situation so far. Jim asks him if he needs a Tic Tac. He says he's okay. And then it's mentioned, your sisters asked me to talk to you about this. He's like, so we're good, right?
He's like, so we've had our talk, right?
He doesn't want to go. And actually, I think Andy did want someone to talk to. So, his whole, we're guys, we don't talk about this because we're generic guys on the sitcom. I think Andy kind of did want to have someone he could talk to about it. So,
yeah, I think he would have probably appreciated it. And you've got to figure that he's known her longer than he has because it's his sister-in-law. Like, maybe he has some insight, right? I don't know.
Unfortunately, the only guy I had to talk to was super everyman king of macho-ness, Jim Belushi. So
why are you fucking going so hard in the paint on Belushi, man?
No. Hold on.
It's the description, how he was described for the show. Macho everyman, Jim Belushi.
Hold on. You just said that she was her sister-in-law? He's their brother.
Gordon, we're not doing this again. If you haven't picked it up by now, just take a nap. Andy, Dana, and Claire are siblings.
Yes.
Okay, so I got that wrong then.
Okay.
Oh, Joe said it wrong. Well, I'll apologize.
Thank you. Maybe you need a nap, Mr. Cranky.
I would benefit greatly from a nap.
He can't take a nap. He's got too many women to cash app later.
That sounds really weird out of context. Really weird out of context.
Even if you were to put it in the context, it's
okay.
Fucking weird.
Now I have to. The whole point, the cash apping was for someone, an internet personality. It was for an internet personality to shout out the show as like a promotional tool. This was not me cash apping just a girl for whatever reason. It was for a shout out for our podcast.
Speaking of shout outs, you should listen to our friends here.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan.
And I'm Steve, and together we host the Stop Ruining My Childhood podcast.
A sometimes nostalgic, sometimes cynical, always humorous look back at pop culture.
Join us as we rewatch cartoons, movies, and live-action TV of the 80s and 90s and ask the question,
does this hold up, or did I just ruin my childhood?
Each week we talk about our childhood memories
and dig into the history of everything we watch, sharing fun facts about how things were made and how they were received at the time.
More importantly, we always start our show with a nostalgic snack review,
which is really our favorite part.
Episodes drop every Thursday on Podbean, Apple, Google, Spotify, Audible, YouTube.
Really, wherever you get your podcasts.
So like, subscribe, and follow.
And revisit your favorite childhood memories with us. All the links to listen are on our website, stopruiningmychildhood.com.
So from there we get to, we're back in the kitchen, and we have Jim and Claire with their youngest son, and Jim's asking how Ruby's first day of school went. And Claire's saying, oh, not good. When I tried to leave, she ran after me. So Claire basically stayed and watched her from outside the window until school was over. So she just sat there for hours.
Well, so my problem with sitting in front of the school all day is you're still not with the daughter. Like, how does that solve?
Yeah.
How does that solve the problem? Is what
You're
I
like
don't
just
understand.
adjacent to. You're not with.
Right.
Maybe just the comfort of knowing she's near, but like if the daughter can see her out the window, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking
Which
that
is just
too,
creepy.
Yeah.
that she can see her out the window, but that'd also be very weird. Like I don't know. I don't get the whole plot point of this show. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And during the scene, there was a little, a nice little gag though with Jim was looking for the screwdriver and it was on the baby's high chair in the kitchen. So he goes to pull it from him because it's sharp. He doesn't want him to get hurt, but then replaces it with a hammer. It was a cute gag. It was weird, like if you dissect it, but
like again, like a quippy little quick thing. They try to like they pepper a lot of those in this one.
I didn't even notice that he put in a hammer. I just saw him say sharp, and then that
Yeah, he
was
swapped
it.
out a hammer from the drawer afterwards.
Oh, I didn't see that.
It's just like one of the many things that just could have been done better. Like, it's just such low effort.
Yeah, a lot of low-hanging fruit here.
And in this scene, it was also established that Claire wants to have Jim and, not Jim, I'm sorry, Andy and his girlfriend over for dinner. Like, this is the way that they're going to resolve this. So maybe if we can get them in the same room together, everything will be resolved. So,
That sounds like a good idea.
yeah, I mean,
Hilarity ensues.
sometimes that resolves a problem, right? If two people aren't talking, sometimes it's just a matter of one of them having to break the ice. So I guess if you get them together.
But still, though, they just broke up. They were dating. Just because you want them together doesn't mean that you get your brother and his ex at a dinner party, right? Like, think about that.
And why is that always the solution? Isn't that like another trope there? Like, oh, let's just have them over for dinner.
It works in
Wait.
Mad About You though. In the pilot for Mad About You, it works.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying from the real world application of that idea, I can't think of a more uncomfortable thing to be at. Oh, these two people are fighting. They just broke up. Let's have them over for dinner at our house. I would rather do so many other things
Oh yeah.
than have two people who just broke up over for dinner. Like, who wants
True.
to be a part of that?
Like, hey, can you pass the salt? Like, oh fuck, thanks for being here.
If they happen to both agree to go, though, that means something, right? Because if you truly don't want to be involved, especially if you're Andy's girlfriend, you're not related to this family. If you don't want to get back with them or
Yeah.
think it's something, you're not going to agree. Like, I'm not just going to go to
It's true.
my ex-boyfriend's sister's house for dinner and just awkwardly sit there. So there has to be something there for them to both agree to it.
No, I agree with that, but I just think the whole concept is odd.
It's unrealistic is the problem.
Right.
And then during the conversation that the two are having, the two girls start running throughout the kitchen and Jim picks them both up and he's like walking into the living room now with one in each arm. And again, I mentioned this too. When you watch this, it's just the way they shot the house it was very unique because there's a lot of moving cameras, which
They
you don't get a lot of that.
line that they don't normally cross a lot. Like, there's like the legitimate fourth wall where the camera stays behind. They kept crossing it. Like, George Lopez did it at the factory. Roseanne
Yeah.
did it at the factory too, actually. But it's weird to see it done at the house.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, there's interesting stuff about this, right? And the shooting of it is probably more interesting than the idea of some of the gags. You know what I mean? So maybe that makes up for it in some ways. But yeah, I think this is like the everyman type of stuff though too. Like he picks up a hammer, he puts his daughters in timeout, but he picks them both up like under his arms at the same time, right? Like they're trying to like exert that he's, or whatever. He's a big guy or whatever.
He's a macho everyman, yeah.
macho everyman.
That's a shirt we need to make. We need to make a Jim Belushi Macho Man shirt that says the Macho Everyman.
After the Horny Frank one, Nick and I have already put some drafts into the chat.
Yeah, I have a couple ideas myself. I want to get a little band of shirts together, and then hopefully we can figure out a good place to do that because some of you might want some merch from us. We haven't really provided that yet, so we're gonna try to get a few designs together, and they're all gonna be sitcom related. Maybe not overly advertising our show in general. it'll probably be there, but just some fun shirts that kind of go along with some of the jokes we've told throughout these episodes.
We're going to see if we can't get sued by Patrick Duffy. That's the ultimate goal here, people.
It's going to be a tightrope walk of figuring out what we can do and what we can't do.
It's all parody, baby. It's legal.
We cut to a little bit later in the night, and now we have the Jim and his wife sitting on the couch, and they're both just kind of in their pajamas with their feet up on the table. And he says to her, "You want to have sex?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's good to know."
He also says, he's like, it's 8:00 at night and we're in our pajamas, and like that is the most realistic getting older moment. At least it's relatable.
It's realistic in that they're exhausted from like a day with 3 young kids running around. But I felt like how sitcom-y to be like, want to have sex, like just to even bring that up the way it was, to just insert it into the moment to talk about sex.
But they're doing it a different way, where it's they both are willing to, but they're both too tired, versus like a Married with Children, like, let's have sex. No pig. Like, it's not that. Yeah. It's like we both could, we both would, but we're so tired, it's not going to happen.
The mind is willing.
Yes, but the flesh is weak and spongy.
Yes.
We've all been there, but I mean, I can't recall ever seeing that in a show. They're both agreed. Yeah, we would, but we're not.
I just feel like it's not talked about in that moment, though, right? When you're both just not feeling it, do you say, "Hey, we totally have sex right now, but we're both so tired"?
I feel like I've said it before, but like way more joking than that, right? Like you're both falling asleep, you'd be like, "You want to go upstairs and it's just like but it's such a joke. It's not like there's no air of it even being anywhere near realistic.
And in the conversation following is when they're trying to figure out the situation with Ruby, because Claire's having this issue like multiple times now where she just sits in front of the school and waits for Ruby to get out because Ruby's so mortified at the thought of one of the parents leaving.
How is the child gonna know?
Through the window.
That's the only way it makes sense. It's through the window, unless she has.
We can't dissect that part. We have to assume, she knows she's there. We know that much. She said she sat in front of like a little bench that's like under a tree or whatever. She gets into specifics, so it is brought up. And this is when Jim steps in. He's like, "You know what? I'll take her to school. Because I'm a man." And that's kind of how it all works. Like, I read an article in Playboy about how men are better at separating than women. And then she replies by saying, "Well, in last month's issue of Jugs, I read the complete opposite." And he replies with, "Nobody reads the articles in Jugs, honey," which cuts to one of many reaction shots of her going like, "Oh, you." And
I forgot to look up / I was watching this and at my work computer, so I didn't want to look up, but was Jugs a real magazine?
I don't know.
Jugs I think it was. I've definitely heard Jugs referred to before.
I don't know if that's like a generic fake porn mag
like
thing.
A generic one. What's the one, speaking of Married with Children, the one he always has, is it Biggins?
Oh, I don't recall.
I think it's Biggins, but it's not your Playboy Penthouse.
Right.
Cherry.
Yeah, it's like big asses.
So I don't think it's a real magazine because I found a bunch of eBay results for Jugs magazine. And I was like, oh, so you can buy like old issues of Jugs. It's literally just antique glass jug catalogs.
In fairness, maybe that's what she was reading.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, that seems like an article that makes more sense in a glass jug magazine than in a porno.
We've gotten into the whole, well, Jim's supposed to be an everyman and this is a generic sitcom, but, well, I read an article in Playboy this month, and it's like, is this real conversation?
I know, it's just so tough to like...
We're men and we separate better. It's like, this was the most generic of the generic.
It's just so cookie cutter, yeah.
It does not land. It does not age well. It's not funny. I wouldn't think it was funny then either, And like one of the worst, most beat to death tropes in the world is the reading the articles in Playboy gag. It's just like, why are you going to that well? Like, just say anything else.
They're like a step away from knock knock jokes here. Like it's just I don't know. They're not trying.
But there's a decent payoff because it closes out, and as he's continuing on about it, he's like, and you just get too emotional, and that's fine. But I'm a man, so I can handle this. You just got to be a rock and walk away. And then it immediately cuts to him in the school with Ruby yelling at the teacher, "I'm not leaving. I can stay here." And the two security, well, not security guards, it's probably like the gym teacher and someone else like goes to pull him off, and you see him getting like dragged through the hallway. So there was a little payoff that takes away from the "I'm so manly," like, because that conversation was a little cringy, so at least it cut to that payoff of him, being all talk.
It was a different time, too, because, like, I was talking about this the other day with Kelsey. We're talking about now how, like, it should be, I mean, recent incidents aside, it's like so hard to like get into a school. And if like you're a kid, like think of when we were in high school, right? Like how often did we just like leave,
Yeah.
come back at random times, be like, I want a coffee, and like three of us would leave and go get coffee or whatever now, right? Like now you can't do that. But also now if you've got a man in there screaming, I'm not leaving in a school, like it's gonna be a way different scenario than just the gym teacher dragging him out comically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This isn't even pre, incidents like that either.
This is post Columbine and
yeah. So, but
But then again, us in high school was post Columbine too, and again, we just like there were like locks on doors, like they hadn't thought of it before.
Well, I mean, also too, this is a kindergarten. Like this isn't, you know what I mean? Parents can go and drop their kids off.
well, no, it's
Right.
not about dropping the kids off. It's about causing a ruckus.
So causing
in
a
the
ruckus
school
in the
once
school
you're
and
there.
maybe being like a guy who could snap.
Yeah, I feel like, all right, never mind. I feel like they're not going to fuck around. But they're not going to send the gym teacher after you. They're going to send like a school safety officer.
Well, we don't know exactly who it is, but I mean, it's a quick gag, and yeah, it's from 20 plus years ago. So after that, we get to back in the house where it's Claire with both her siblings. So now we have Claire, Andy, and Dana all together at the same time. And Claire's praising Jim for his ability to deal with the situation with Ruby and handling the whole school thing. And then it comes up that, well, Andy kind of offhandedly brings up that Jim hasn't been showing up to work until about 3:30. So 3 o'clock, I guess, is when the drop-off happened, or when he would have to pick her up from school. And I was having a little hard time understanding the dynamic of what he does. So he leaves work to pick her up, takes her home, then goes back to work.
Yeah, the time of like, because later when he says, oh, he didn't show up to work until 3:30, it sounds like for like the first time that day.
Yeah.
That
It's like, what?
he didn't show up. And I was confused with that too. Yeah, that was strange.
Because like we're supposed to concede that he's like sitting on the bench now too, right? He's doing the same thing as the
Yeah, so
mom.
because that's what happens. Because at first the thought is, oh my God, you think Jim's having an affair? And then there's the shot of the two, Claire and her sister just laughing like, ha ha ha, like more like he couldn't pull off an affair. Not so much like it was like what was it? Like he's too ugly to have an affair? Like what, like the joke of it?
It's just an easy joke.
Yeah, they played into the common easy joke, but with no real context behind it. So
Right.
And like, it doesn't matter what you look like unless you're like a mega babe or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure like you can't make that joke about a Jason Momoa or whoever, who we talked about last week who I didn't know.
Joe Manganiello, superstar hottie?
Yeah, a Joe Magniello or whatever, or a Jason Statham or what have you. Like, you can't make that joke, but like to a regular person, you can make the like, oh, he's just a schlubby idiot. No one would cheat on him. In this scene too, I don't know if you guys caught this, and I don't mean this like I was looking for something weird, but the sister is wearing jeans. Do you remember? This took me right back to 2001. Before you could buy low-rise jeans, like if you wanted low-rise jeans, you cut the entire top of the jeans off to the button. And that's what she's doing there, which is like what girls would do.
I did not notice that, yeah.
Of all ages, but I hadn't thought of it in so long because now you can buy low-rise jeans, right? And you could like since like a year after this. So it was like only a fashion thing until the big companies were like, oh, well, if people want low-rise jeans, we'll just make them, right? But it just like totally sucked me back in time. Where it was like, I haven't even thought of that being a thing in so long.
Not relatable for me. I wasn't wearing a lot of, low-rider jeans.
Well, they're women's jeans.
Which you wore a lot of in 2001.
I still wear women's jeans, yeah. They
Yeah,
fit better.
so-
and I wear low-rise jeans, too, because now
So-
I'm
so I
so
was gonna say,
stuck on low-rise jeans that it's just comfortable. But if they stopped making
I think I
them
said
tomorrow-
low-rider. That's how out of touch I am. After you said it, I called them low-rider jeans. Yeah.
Back to George Lopez's theme song.
Burp, 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 burp.
But what I'm saying is tomorrow, if they were like, we don't make jeans like that anymore, you can't wear jeans that you find like low-rise comfortable anymore, I wouldn't go buy a bunch of high-rise jeans and cut the top.
Right. Yeah, you would just have to adapt at this point. Yeah. But then from the whole, ha ha ha, he wouldn't have an affair, becomes, oh my God, taking Ruby to school and picking her up to lighten my load. Jim's never worried about my load before, which, funny line, pause.
That line, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it's like, he's been sitting outside Ruby's classroom too, just like you did. Yeah. And they're having this big revelation. But first, to go back, he is actually trying to help you lighten the load. Like, that was his intention. He had a hard time separating. But like, hers, like, oh, like he was scheming. Like, the way she delivered it was like, oh, lighten my load, huh? Yeah, you never cared about that.
They can't pick a fucking lane is the problem.
Yeah, like I don't understand her mindset there is like even if he's unsuccessfully detaching like he's supposed to, he is still helping you by picking her up and dropping her off every day.
Or even if he's there all day long, she's doing whatever she has her day back now. Either way, she's getting a service done for her.
This episode gave me, and I've talked about this before, and it's funny too because I don't think I was actually on the Everybody Loves Raymond episode that we did. But I fucking hate Deborah on that show because Ray, it doesn't matter what he does, he cannot win. Like, there's no instance in which, it doesn't matter. Like, he could have done, and he's always wrong. And I saw gleams of that with these two, and I was like, oh no, not another one. I can't deal with it.
Yeah, I think like Jim plays that character a little more like doopy and in kind of cutting corner type of guy.
Yeah, right.
Where Ray, you sympathize for him because he's just always like you just picture him constantly going, what did I do? Like that's how he comes off. But yeah, now Dana's like, oh, like we have to go get him. And she's like, oh no, this is all me. Like I've earned this one. It's like, trust me, you know, if you ever get married, you'll come to realize that these are moments you savor. And I'm like, huh? I don't understand. Like you're going to bust him individually. That's your big moment. Like now she's like, I have him in this lie. I need to catch him. This is going to be so good.
Yeah, which is super unhealthy, by the way.
Right, also that.
Yeah.
But just the idea of like, let's go get him and catch him and like, like we got you. And just even then the idea like, oh no, you can't be there because like, this is mine.
Right, yeah.
Does that change it? If she, like, what is the sister there? Like, does that dull the moment somehow?
I just add it to the list.
Now we get to Jim sitting in his living room, wrapped in toilet paper with the daughters there. And they're like, he's reading like how they embalmed and like mummified people in ancient Egypt. And he's going through like this description to his young daughter. So I get that we want to make daddy a mummy and wrap him in toilet paper. But then he's reading about, no, and then the embalmers remove the stomach and other organs and cut the lower abdomen and
take the brain out of the nose with a hook.
Like, this is interesting.
The joke, though, this ends up on, though, did get me for a laugh. And then the follow-up joke to it, I did laugh at both of them.
This was the one thing I thought was the funniest of the whole episode.
Yeah, me too.
Even when he was like, all right, then they would cut the lower abdomen and pull all the guts out. He's like, okay, we already did that. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I do like that he was like calling them out like they already did it. But when he says, stuff daddy's mouth with corn chips, that was like, I know this is going to pay off funny. And it does. That's the funniest joke in the episode.
And it did work. That like it was. Can we stuff your mouth with corn chips, Daddy? Like, because they're so into the game and they believe everything he's saying. So when he says that that's what they did in Egypt and they want to play mummy, so now they're like, let's go get corn chips and shove them in Daddy's mouth, just like they really did to the real mummies.
He's kind of a genius parent.
It is like it's the same as playing the Frozen Man game. In those regards, it's funny.
I did want to mention too, though. We've mentioned it a lot in many of our sitcoms, but another pair of good child actors. I don't think they did a bad job at all with. Especially, they do have a good amount of screen time too, which you don't see, especially for kids that young. They did. Yeah, a pretty
Gracie
good
doesn't
job.
say too much other than I have a vagina.
But she steals the show.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, if there's any one line that you're going to remember, down the road from this episode, it's going to be the I have a vagina.
It's very weird, but that is the takeaway line. You know what I mean? Although I do like earlier when Andy says, does he say something along the lines of like, I forgot I must not speak when I'm near people. Something like that, where I was like, I really did like that line, which is like something along those lines or whatever. I think it was a funny way to go about life.
And he does remind the kids to make sure they get the big bag when they go to get the corn chips. And then Claire shows up. She was kind of watching along during some of this, and she's giving him like the smile.
Can I just say, though, that like, I know we're ripping on him for playing mummy, but like, good father right there for like teaching them about like, not only is he playing mummy, but like he's also reading to them about ancient Egypt. Like he's
maybe
not
a little
that
too graphic for their age bracket, but sure.
It's still history.
The point of contention with his work or with his, duties is only with her. We've agreed that he's pulling his weight, but she seems to have a problem with everything anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably because she's really upset that she threw away her career by leaving Melrose Place to be in a Carrot Top movie.
Yeah, so the wife's looking at him and smiling, and this whole scene is just Jim trying to figure out what her angle is because she's being like overly nice, and he's not sure what's going on, and he's trying to like get to the bottom of it. And it's a lot of that like...
It's very sitcom-y
dialogue. You seem nervous.
Like,
yeah, I'm not nervous at all.
Or he's like, could it be a look of gratitude? I wouldn't recognize that. Like crowd laughs, it's a lot of just easy jokes.
during that conversation, though, between them is when the two daughters show up, and the Ruby, the older of the two, is holding a bag of like nachos that are the size of, like, they would go from like her knee to her head. It was so large.
It's a huge bag.
They're like restaurant nachos.
He said, I said get the big bag. So they run back off.
That's a great joke.
It was a good joke. A little unrealistic though. That's kind of the thing that when I think about shows like this and like these kind of sitcoms, those are the jokes that it was funny, but it's not real. So it takes me out of it a little bit because there is no bag of.
I'll tell you the reason the reason I liked that joke was because I didn't see it coming either. You know what I mean? Because they showed up with a huge bag and he said, no, the big bag. And it caught me and it was funny. So I feel like all the other jokes in this are like predictable, you know, boilerplate shit. And that one wasn't. So I did enjoy it.
Now, people listening might correct me, or you guys might correct me. When he said corn chips, I'm thinking Fritos.
I thought Fritos as
yes,
well,
but he's also not wrong. Like corn tortilla
Technically,
chips.
yeah, because people refer to tortillas like as chips, which is correct as well. And it, you know, corn or flour. So corn chips.
I agree, though. That's what I was
right.
thinking of.
If we were all hanging out right now and I was like running to the store to get snacks for everybody, like I said I'd take the run or whatever, and somebody said bring me corn chips, I would bring them back Fritos.
Yeah, it's Fritos.
Me too. Yeah.
All right, and someone might think otherwise, and you know, if you are from a different area and you guys call them corn chips, by all means, correct me.
Speaking of, do they ever say where they're from?
They're like Chicago people.
Are they?
I don't know if it's addressed in this episode, but it takes place in Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah, I assume that it's so Chicago. He's like everything. He's one of those people who like puts his place in everything. You know, it's like a very John Hughes thing where it's like everything is gonna be Chicago for him. Also, that many tortilla chips. Gordon and I were talking off air a little while ago about how you can use your wedding ring as a gauge for if you've had too much salt because your thumb swells up and it gets like super tight on you. You imagine eating that many? I mean, it would be delicious at first. And is he going salsa? Is he going like a bean dip? Is he just eating them plain?
He strikes me as just like a bowl of plain kind of guy.
A bowl of plain.
I was going to say, side note here. How do you guys eat your corn chips?
I don't often eat them. I don't know. Is there a lot of, yeah.
I love, do you mean Fritos or do you mean tortilla chips?
Fritos, not tortilla chips. Tortilla chips are tortilla chips.
Sometimes
Fritos.
people drop them in chili. Like, Nick, you drop them in chili,
yeah,
right?
I crumble them on chili or a chili dog. But other than that, I just eat them straight up.
Yeah.
It's not something I often buy, so it's not like I'm just out buying Fritos very often. So.
I like them plain, but they always make me think of smart food as like this too, right? Where like I like smart food a lot. I like Fritos a lot. I don't eat junk food like that very often, and a little goes a long way for me. But it's like if you eat a handful of Fritos and you touch anything, no matter how many times you've washed your hands
so
for the
greasy,
next
yeah.
6 hours, you're going to get like grease streaks. And if you eat smart food, you can't get the grit off of your hands. Especially if you then like touch a glass that has like condensation on it and you get water into it, then you make like a cake. Oh, it's the worst.
Oh, yeah. It's like, cheddar paste. That's on your fingers forever.
Yeah, I'm a straight up OG man myself with the Fritos.
Yeah, like Fritos just out of the bag.
Yeah, me too.
It's very rare. It's so salty.
They are. That's what I like about them. Sometimes I'm in a mood and I'm in a salty mood.
I would say Fritos are probably in my top 3, but I get sick of them pretty easily too. Like I'm like, yeah, let's get some Fritos rather. And then you get like halfway through a bag and you're like, oh, I'm so fucking sick of Fritos right now. Yeah.
The hard thing about that too is, you know, if you go to say buy a bag of like Doritos, right, or like smart food, like we mentioned, right, it's the same size bag no matter what. But Fritos only comes in one size. And it's in between. It's bigger than like a bag of Doritos, but it's not as big as a bag of potato chips. So you can't also just buy, unless you go to Walmart where they have those little bins out front where like sometimes you can get like a little kid's lunch size bag for like 49 cents.
Yeah,
and that's like the perfect amount of Fritos.
It is a good amount.
You can also eat that bag because it's so small like this and then avoid getting your hands all gross.
I also do love scoops.
I was going to say like this. Bag in your mouth.
There's a visual that accompanies that for those of you listening. I don't want to describe it.
To Nick's point, though, the scoops with salsa, that's a win. But the scoops alone, too much Frito.
The airline that I work for, we used to have Fritos as an on-flight snack for a short period of time. Frito was there, but we've since moved on. And moving on from Frito talk, we are now at dinner. Andy's not there yet, and there's a worry from his girlfriend, Carrie, I believe, that he might not show up. Now, we talked about this earlier with Jim and Cheryl. Having seen Andy, and no disrespect to the man himself, but again, visually, they are not of the same point scale, I guess, if we're going to do the old-fashioned 1 to 10s, they are very far apart from one another.
Yeah, there's a big gap there.
To use the only football analogy I ever use, and it's always in this reference, he outkicks his coverage. They both have outkicked their coverage in this scenario.
I'm trying to think of what that even means.
They're doing way better than they should be. They've gone ahead of what should be blocking them.
You know who Andy reminds me of? Is it just me, or does he remind you guys of like Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows? I don't know why.
No.
I don't see that at all, but
No.
I will say the new season of What We Do in Shadows, though, has been...
And he's like a comedian in his own right, but he kind of gives me, I guess, to compare him, kind of an Andy Richter vibe.
I thought it was Andy Richter at first, too, when they said his name, and then I just heard the voice, but then I looked up, and when I saw the hair, I knew it wasn't, but I think he's in Wedding Crashers, this guy. He's recognizable from something.
He's in a bunch of stuff, yeah. But going back to the attractiveness gap between them, at least for Jim and his wife, you could argue, oh, maybe they met when they were younger. He was probably in better shape, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't sound like Andy and his girl were together for that long. So she signed on for Andy as is.
Yeah, like they just met. And no offense to Andy, but like, you know.
But I mean, yeah. I mean, we're going by...
I would hope that Jim and his wife didn't meet too far younger, you know.
Oh, yeah, she's 14 years younger than him.
And he was a cool 28-year-old man. Just like...
You want to hear me play harmonica?
He designed the middle school that she was going to.
You want to honk on this, Bobo?
Oh, there it is. Well, I was going to say, have you ever seen The Substitute? I feel like she's one of the students that he's a substitute for. That's how they met. That's the backstory of this TV show. Oh, I like this show way better now. I would say I'd write fan fiction for that, but I think I'd go to jail.
Yeah, well, we'll move on from that. So, so the talk is, you know, he'll be here. And she's crying. And Jim, you know, because he's just a dumb guy, he was hungry, is just chomping away at his dinner and being pretty loud, and they're looking at him, he's like, oh, I'm not supposed to eat when someone's crying? I didn't know that was a rule.
I would fight somebody if they ever ate that loud next to me. Just like clanking their fork and fucking scraping it
just
on
like
the plate.
Like a fucking caveman.
Yeah,
just
have a little
bouncing everything off
decorum,
the
you
table.
asshole.
I think it's on purpose, though. I think he's trying to, like, show dominance. To be like, you're in my house, and I don't want this to be here, so I'm just going to be a dickhead.
I think they're doing it to just show what a caveman he is.
Yeah, just that all those like typical I am the man of the house things. Like, I'm eating my dinner now.
I think if they wanted to do that, though, they would have picked a food that was way more hand-friendly than lasagna, because to prove that, like, he's just like a Neanderthal or whatever, you want to give him something he can pick up.
Well, it's not like his wife's like, the turkey legs are ready. And she's...
Well, it doesn't have to be that, though. I mean, it could be a number of... I mean, obviously the spaghetti meatballs isn't going to work, but, like, you know, there's some things, or, like, it could have even been pizza, you know what I mean? Like, and then he could have just been, like, shoving pizza in his face, right?
No, I agree with Joe that I think that they are just establishing that he doesn't want to hear it. I get that vibe.
I wanted to say lasagna. I think it falls into, we brought this up. Oh, what show was it recently? Was it Small Wonder where she was making a roast? And I'm like, that's like such a typical sitcom food. And lasagna falls right into that too. Not that you never have lasagna, but it's kind of more of a special occasion food than a Sunday dinner for the most part nowadays. Or maybe just like in my surroundings, we don't often just make a lasagna.
I love making lasagna. I love eating lasagna, but lasagna takes forever to make and then forever to cook. So I make it usually at Thanksgiving and then like one other time every winter.
Forever to cool too. You can't cut that shit right away.
Oh no, you can't just eat it either.
Also,
you have to have time.
Super easy to fuck up too, which I don't like, but I do love a good lasagna.
I could not remember for the life of me when, but this is also not our first on-air lasagna conversation.
No, we had a conversation about what kind of noodles we use, and I think Nick and I were talking about the non-boil noodles that I've been using.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
That's it. I don't remember what episode. Yeah, it was quite.
It was definitely
quite a bit
early
ago.
on in the run. It was probably the weather where you could have had lasagna. That's why it made sense at the time. It is not right now.
So from there, Andy finally walks in, and he has the hair dryer with like a bow on it, and he had to go to 3 stores to get the right one. And she's like, "Oh, it's just like the one that you broke." And right away, like that moment's already like over, like the sweetness, because you see that little like. Andy tried to like, you know, make everything right, and she's getting right back into the argument.
Yep,
just stay broken up right there.
This also follows up, we talked about a bunch of jokes that got like pushed in, and you understand why they're pushed in, like, because it's like a sitcom trope or whatever. They get in this fight right here, and his response to her is like, "You're going to say that Abraham Lincoln died of normal wear and tear." What the fuck is that joke?
normal wear and tear from the gun.
I get how he died, and I get what we're doing, but we're just gonna reference Abraham Lincoln. Like, that's such a weird,
was very
out of
weird.
nowhere.
Well, no, the point is they know he didn't die from normal wear and tear, and that's what she's accusing him of. She's
Right,
accusing
but
him
Lincoln?
It was a weird.
I'm more confused with the Lincoln.
Well, it's because everybody knows how he died.
I guess, but I mean, even if you said JFK, you would have been like, oh, well, that was 30 years ago. Like, it's
It was
more
still just
than-
I don't know. It was just too random of a pivot for me personally. But
Yeah, I'm not trying to defend the joke. It wasn't good either way, but I get where they were coming from.
I like how the argument
Yeah.
even came up. Like after she mentioned it, though, at first he tried to swallow it and not acknowledge what she said,
They just couldn't do it.
and he's just like, "Oh, lasagna." Huh? He's like, "Oh, Cheryl, your lasagna. I didn't break it." he couldn't hold it anyway. He was trying to like
He
get
didn't
through
make
it.
it long.
Yeah, he's just gonna talk to his sister about her lasagna, but he just couldn't swallow that. And I guess for me that's so relatable because I am so bad at biting my lip.
Yeah, and then every one of us have gotten in trouble for that. This is the classic go get your fucking shine box scene right here, where he just like can't not fucking let it out, and it's gonna cause him a huge problem.
And Jim kind of, because now the two are arguing, and he's like, "Knock it off." He's like, "This whole thing's upsetting my stomach. I can't eat." And Dana gives him a look. He's like, "Well, I can finish what's on my plate. I'm worried about dessert." It's like,
Another joke where you're like, what the fuck,
I didn't
guys?
hate that one, actually. I thought it was okay.
it was typical. It was very expected.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad joke per se. I just he's like I can't eat, and I was like, and here's where he says like except for what I've already had and maybe a second course. Like you just can track it way too easy.
And he does get into a pivot from there where he's telling them, "Hey, listen, this is the kind of fight you're going to get into if you're going to be in a relationship. These things happen." And he starts talking about how him and his wife have been talking about, and it was mentioned earlier, we didn't bring it up here, a story where he slammed the car door on her arm. And the argument has been that she asked him to do that. And he's like, why wouldn't I do it unless you asked me to? It was a very weird.
Again, something that could have been done better. They, especially considering how often they went back to this after the joke was made, they really should have put more work into it because it was an awful representation of what they were trying to go for.
There is his logic though, and his reason for dying on this hill does make me laugh. Where at one point she's like, "Why would I ask you to close the car door on me?" He's like, "Why would I close the car door on you if you didn't ask me to?" Like, they're at such a perfect stalemate that I laugh so hard at that situation because no one will ever win that argument. And both people have insane fucking arguments.
It's just, yeah, but both, it's like, obviously it was an accident, but the idea on either part that it was either done intentionally or it was asked to be done is crazy.
Yeah.
So both of them sound weird in this argument.
That not one of them can be like, I realized this was an accident that happens. Everyone slammed a hand in a door or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's very rarely intentional unless you're in like an action movie.
Did you guys note like the shooting of this dinner scene? How to me it felt so awkward because it was all these like solo shots of everybody. So the way it was cutting around, because she was at one end by herself and Jim was at an end by himself. So every time they shot someone, it was a lot of like alone. It didn't feel right.
The only thing I can think of is that, for sitcoms, it's considered multicam, right? Like when you shoot a sitcom, it's called a multicam, but they're shooting this as if it's not a multicam. You know what I mean? It's called multicam because you can have multiple angles, right? Whereas a traditional TV show or movie, you have to shoot the reactions and shoot the dialogue for the reactions. But they're doing that with multicam, and it's uncomfortable because it's not how it should be shot.
It's the way they shot this table. Yeah, you couldn't get the like cameras positioned in a way that you could shoot them individually the way they wanted to. But yeah, usually it's usually a 3-camera shoot for sitcoms, and they run all 3 cameras at the same time. And they just kind of switch from, shot to shot, whatever works best.
What's weird about the scene for me too is because they're doing that, and maybe this was intentional, but they're going from person to person, and then when everything sort of blows up and the sister is like, "Hey, everybody, let's go get ice cream, let's all get out of here," you realize that the kids are there, and that like this family is just having a huge knockdown drag out fight, and they're not just friends, they're legitimate families. So these are these people's nieces and nephew. Like, that's their uncle and aunt, and they're having this huge fight in front of this family at the dinner table with the little kids there who were like, what do we say, like probably 5 and 3 or whatever? Like, that's weird to me, and that's jarring that these people are such fucking selfish idiots and dickheads that they're having this fight in front of the kids. But at least they figure out enough to get out of there when their fight is over. Like, they still have, like, they're not the heroes in this because they did the same thing.
Yeah, because it turns from like an Andy and his girlfriend argument to Jim and his wife argument pretty quickly. And as they're going back and forth, the car door thing, it also turns into the, honey, there's nothing you wouldn't tell me about, right? You know, referencing the whole thing about the daughter and him sitting in front of the school, you know, just like she did. It's like, oh, I can't think of anything. And he's like, well, maybe you need to look a little deeper than the top of your head, you know, like maybe below the sports scores and right above the lyrics to Louie Louie. It's like, huh?
That was another one where I was like,
Yeah, I was confused as fuck on that one.
Louie Louie famously people don't know the lyrics to, and it was investigated by the FBI when it came out because they thought there was like subversive messages in it. So like knowing the lyrics to Louie Louie is like a thing most people don't know, but that's also a song from like 1964. I mean, like, again, it's weird, the references, and he's a blues guy, but they only reference the Kingsmen and the Rolling Stones in this. He's not like, this is Buddy Guy, or like, they didn't like name some like Southside Chicago blues guys or whatever.
It was just weird. It was like oh, you can't think of anything? Well, like maybe look past all those sports scores because you're such a guy and that's all
Past
you know
those
about.
corn chips.
And then that's like this whole, the reveal, right? She goes, because he's like, oh, that's not that look of gratitude, is it? Like referencing to early when they had that awkward conversation. No, this is the look of, you're totally busted for sitting outside Ruby's school. Like this was the big moment that her and her sister couldn't bust him together and catch him there, right? The big moment was her just at the dinner table going, you're totally busted, mister.
Again, super generic.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, this is not great. Also, like, again, no offense to her, but like, this is a scene where like, woof, the acting is not great here. And it's choices. It's not bad acting. It's weird choices. Like to play that version of the mom where you're like, you're gonna get it, mister. I know you're lying. It's like, wait, what are we doing all of a sudden? You were talking about sex a little while ago. Like, this is kind of a weird, I don't know where you're going.
Poorly
And
written.
this was the pivot I didn't expect. And this was actually maybe the one moment of the episode I went, oh shit, that I felt engaged. So then it becomes, how did you let Mrs. Carter let you stay anyways? And this is when Ruby speaks up and goes, Mrs. Carter was my teacher at my old school. Mrs. Scavio is my new teacher now. So this is where we find out that Jim actually pulled Ruby out of her school and placed her in a new school so he could continue to watch her while she's in school because she was so upset about them leaving.
Was that how it went? I thought she got kicked out of the school because of him and he had to find her a new school.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
me
interpreted
too.
that he pulled her like it was his decision. Because that's her reaction was,
I thought he
you
got
took her out of the school.
I'm with Jay in this one. I thought it was that he was not going to be allowed to even stay on the property anymore like the mom was, so he decided to take her to a new school where he could stay with her.
I could see both making sense.
Because it looks
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the way the wife reacted was, you made this decision without me. So that's how I read that.
Yeah, that actually does make more sense now in hindsight, I guess.
And that's when he's like, oh yeah, she doesn't go to Havenhurst anymore. She goes to Emerson, which is a very good school, honey. So that, again, the one time in the episode where I was like, oh, where's this going? Because that was like, to me, that was such a wild concept that he would do something like that. Like now I'm a little engaged. And that's when, I think, Joe, you mentioned it earlier, that's when everyone disperses and you see the whole family just get up and who wants to go for ice cream? And, you know, Aunt Dana's going to take the kids out and they're all leaving. So now it's just, you know, the two of them at the table and they're talking about this.
I don't know which kid it is, but you hear just faintly in the background. I wrote this down because I was like, this kid's like a little kid after my own heart, where it's like, what flavor do you want? And one little girl just goes, I want vanilla. And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, that girl rules. Like, just, you don't have to go crazy just because you're there. You don't have to get gummy bears on it and get 10 flavors. If you just want vanilla, just get vanilla. I like strawberry ice cream.
You know, we have these talks all the time. I don't know if we've covered ice cream specifically. I couldn't say I have a favorite flavor of ice cream specifically because I think I'm kind of an in the moment guy, but I like vanilla plenty. Like,
Vanilla's good.
There's a reason that like chocolate and vanilla are the most, you know, go-to flavors, you know.
I'm telling you,
everyone likes at least one of them.
the regular vanilla chocolate soft serve swirl can't be slept
Oh, the
on.
mix.
Yeah, and I hate when I have to make a decision. We did it recently when we went on our golf trip there with everybody but Joe. And you have so many ice cream options, but at the end of the day, I just wanted the swirl. I ended up going with an actual ice cream, but I should have got the swirl.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the ice cream truck sometimes too, right? When you were a kid, where there's so many things, and I almost always ended up getting something. Like if they didn't have the wrestling bars, all I ever really wanted was that little triangle that had the piece of bubble gum in the bottom.
yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. Yeah.
But then you're like, I guess I'll get the Ninja Turtle, and then you're eating it, and you're like, I just wanted the fucking thing with the ball on the bottom. Like, I freaked out. Too
the
many
Ninja
options.
Turtles, well, those are all like the same thing. That's what I actually like about those ones, whether you get Tweety Bird or Batman or any of those. But like, those are all great for what they are. It's like the Rocket Pops are that same kind of soft. I don't know they're just called like frozen desserts, right? I don't even know what they technically are.
Yeah,
Those
'cause
ones,
it's not
but-
ice cream or whatever.
Yeah, those are always good. I like those ones. They're all kind of just cherry flavored. But as far as ice cream itself,
I'm a
You're
vanilla man.
too.
Yeah.
see, like again, I'm in the moment. Pistachio, I get a lot nowadays, but
Pralines and Dick is my go-to.
pralines and Dick.
My go-to all the time.
I think when we were kids, it would have been like chocolate chip cookie dough was like the only one I'd ever get. But I don't do that as much as I'm older.
I haven't had ice cream probably in like 3 or 4 years at this point. It just doesn't make me feel good anymore. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's one of those foods now where I'm like, and it's not even anything out of like food allergies. It's just like, I don't know, being 36, if I eat a bunch of ice cream, I'm just going to feel terrible.
Yeah, I mean, a little here and there, but I'm a gluttonous man. But when we go for ice cream, I'm not getting larges. I'm usually just, put a scoop in a cup. That's all I really need.
Yeah.
I like the fruit bars now.
Oh, those are great.
Those are
yeah,
great. Little
the
strawberry
real
chunks
fruit
in them
ones.
or whatever.
Yep.
Lots of flavors you can get.
I love
Strawberry's
those
a good
ones.
one.
But back to this. We get to the argument between the two, and it's all about the changing of the schools. And he's saying, what was I supposed to do? Ruby was hysterical. I was told to leave. There was a struggle. Drinking fountain was broken, and they threw him out. And he said so reading back, he said they threw me out, and I took Ruby with me. So it was his
So he does say it.
decision to
Okay.
take her.
All right.
But he's like, what was I supposed to do? Walk away from a screaming child?
I guess that does make way more sense because I can't imagine them being like, oh, all right. I mean, yeah, it was weird. They had to kick him out of school, but I can't be like, and fuck your daughter too. Get her out
Yeah.
of school.
Yeah. The boat you fucking came in on. Fuck off. I also like that he says the water fountain was inadvertently broken. I do like that.
Yeah.
That's as we go through this, I feel like there are a few different things we keep being like, I actually got a laugh out of this. I
was
this.
just thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it takes the analytical part of you when I think sometimes watching these shows, we miss the point a little bit of them because we're paying so much attention to them. You know what I mean?
I try to watch it once before I do my notes.
I wanted to mention this because I thought about this today too. I think a big part of what we do as far as this podcast and our green lights and cancels go relies heavily on the mood you're in when you're watching the episode. If you're busy and something, because sometimes like I literally don't have time to sit down for 25 minutes and just like do nothing but watch this TV show. If I'm busy, I'm going into it with a chip on my shoulder against this show, which I know happens to Ferg more than us, I think. If he's in like a shitty mood and he's watching a TV show, it doesn't matter what happens. He's going to hate the show. But I've definitely been close to that before. I've been in, busy or, crappy mood or whatever, and I've given a show shit because of the mood I was in, not the quality of the show. So
That's exactly what I felt happened when we did Cavemen. I'm like, Nick's just in a bad mood right now.
I greenlit Cavemen.
No, you didn't.
Oh, no, I didn't. You're right. Yeah. I did
See?
cancel that. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna update that one. So
All
now
right,
we'll
maybe
save-
we can. That's what I'm saying. We need to go back and do some of these shows because there are shows I want to change.
I want to establish a way we can do that. There's also so many shows we still need to cover, so it's just a matter of figuring out the right avenue and how we're gonna go and.
We should just do like a quarterly thing. Once every 3 months, we'll go back. We'll do a quick, like 15, 20-minute episode. Maybe go through the ones we've done in the past, see if we've changed our minds on them.
or not even that. Everybody can just go through all of them personally and see if there's any they'd change. Everybody can just go in a circle.
We can just go in and talk about it. Yeah, it's like
Well, we're coming up on episode 75, you guys.
75's coming up, yeah.
weeks. So maybe right around then it's a good time.
we'll table this conversation, and at some point we'll figure out a way to get you guys like some sort of a bonus episode or something you can listen to. That maybe we'll do outside of our normal weekly, just as a little thank you for listening and give you some extra content.
Yeah, that last conversation we had is just basically our WhatsApp chat without Gordo throwing beams at us. That was basically what they were listening to.
I was going to say, would you like me to just talk about dabbing on you guys and Dragon D's nuts? Because
I prefer wrapping up this show first.
Yeah. Let's
Dude, we can discuss NFT apes later. Let's get through this TV show.
keep my apes out of this.
But so she's anyways mad at Jim and saying, not only did you lie, but you had our daughter lie to me too. And he's like, whoa, hold on. I didn't tell her to lie to you. All I said was to not tell you about it. And I gave her some money. And she's like, you gave her money. He's like, well, it was only $1. You can't buy anything with $1 anyways.
I do like that that's his argument. He bribed her with not that much money.
I feel like that's worse somehow.
Yeah, I'd say a bribery is worse than just asking, just in anything, really, I guess.
In his brain, he's like, I solved the problem. What's the big deal? And there's an element of truth to that, but such a major decision like where your children
Doesn't mean
go
it
to
wasn't
school.
a dick move, yeah.
Yeah, you still have to consult her. And even if it was in the moment, even if in the moment you said, all right, we're out of here, and you said it like in the heat of the moment, you have to then tell her. Like, even if it was a rash decision and like you weren't thinking at the time, you have to then consult with her at some point, not just when the daughter spills the beans. Like, is this supposed to go on for the entire school year? Like, what was the end plan?
Yeah, I don't get that because at some point the mother is going to come back.
PTA night, something, yeah. Parent-teacher conference, a play.
And there is a point where, as this scene kind of concludes, she's going up the stairs, and again, it's just like it's being shot so different than a typical sitcom.
Yeah, the camera's like in the kitchen instead of outside.
It was very bizarre to see how a lot of directorial choices, I guess, just the layout of the house and how it was shot. It was just it was unique, but it threw me because I was just not expecting to see even just certain angles. It's funny how typical sitcoms are shot. We're so used to them that anything that, like, anytime a camera moves, you go, wait, what's happening? Wait, whoa.
I also can't remember, was there a stairway in the living room too, or is this...
Yes.
Yeah, I believe there was one in the back.
The whole double stairway thing in every sitcom ever made. I've never seen that in real life.
Yeah, I know. Like, in real life, it doesn't happen. And it concludes with like that whole, honey, I figured out what I want, because she said she owed him one earlier in the episode, and she goes, do it yourself, you know.
You expect that callback. No, I don't like to harp on, I mean, I love to harp on the sexual stuff. That's fucking bread and butter in this show. But I always assume in these gags, the joke is blowjob. I really want our listener who commented on the Vaseline to weigh in on this, because I really enjoyed her take on that.
Yeah, we apparently don't know what we're talking about. So.
None of us know about sex or whatever. But I assume when you say, like, I want this thing that you don't want to do, it's not just sex, right? Because that's sort of a mutual avenue. It's either something she doesn't want to do or something you don't get very often. So my head always goes towards this is a blowjob joke. Is that where you guys go in these scenarios?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a safe assumption, I think.
Safe assumption, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's some sort of a sexual act, right? So whether it's the full deed or not, but I guess that makes the most sense because I guess mouth stuff comes off more as a favor than something that's...
Right, yeah. Because it's a one-way street.
It's a one-way street, yeah.
And, well, from that, now he's tucking his daughters in bed. And you cut to him in bed with not him in bed, but him in the bedroom of his two daughters. And he's, I guess the younger one's already asleep, so he's just tucking Ruby in. And she's asking, like, is mommy mad? And it's like, well, yeah. And she apologizes, like, no, it's not your fault. It's mine. And...
They really harp on the dollar thing in the scene.
Yeah, it's like, well, you're probably going to have to give me the dollar back. And cuts to a reaction shot of her laughing because
they go to the well
reaction
mat like
shots.
3 times in this scene.
He says, I can't stay around at your school anymore. And she's like, well, why not? And he's like, well, it's kind of like that Stone song. You can't always get what you want. And that felt so out of place. And I know there's a payoff because she even says...
Rolling Stones fucking song to a 6-year-old?
Why would you reference Abraham Lincoln at the dinner table? I mean, like, it's...
That was weird in its own right. But this one, I'm glad she at least, because as I'm watching it, I'm writing like, why would you say that? At least there was a payoff right after, because she's like, I don't know who the Rolling Stones are, So he does get into it a little bit more, but it was you could tell like Jim Belushi, right? Not Jim, the character in the show. Jim Belushi is just throwing in all these things he likes, right? Whether it's not so much in this episode, but like the sports and blues music and all this stuff and rock and roll and all these things that are interested in him. Sure, but it's just such a weird forced injection into that. Like I feel like that wasn't the line originally, like it was a different band or maybe he had just had a play in it, but it just doesn't feel like a natural line that they wrote for him for the script.
It feels like ad placement. Like that's how awkward it was.
Because it didn't belong, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually, yeah.
When he's mentioning the Stones, right, he mentions 4 songs, right? So you can't always get what you want. That makes sense because he's making the reference, right?
I already know where you're going with this, but yeah.
And then he mentions Jumpin' Jack Flash, which I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Jumpin' Jack Flash with him and Whoopi Goldberg.
No.
It's going to be 87
I
or
didn't
88.
get that.
R.I.P.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so I assumed that was like a good reference point to that. But of all the songs, and I'm not even trying to be weird about it, but like I knew not to sing Brown Sugar's lyrics out loud when I was like 11. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I was older before I was more aware of that song. I was...
Enlighten me. I don't know why it's inappropriate.
I mean, the whole thing is, I mean, the first verse of that song talks about like a slave ship coming to the cotton fields and the slaver hitting the girl,
okay.
and then Brown Sugar, why do you taste so good? Is the slave driver, slavers, I guess is the right term, having sex with the slave, right? And the Rolling Stones don't play it anymore, right? Like, obviously they pretty much caught up on that. But like, if I was gonna mention 4 Rolling Stone songs to my kid, and one was a joke, one was a reference, and I had 2 more, I'd probably not pick the one where it was about slave sex. I don't know. It just seemed like a weird pick to me. They have so many great. He could have said "Under My Thumb." You know, he could have fucking said
"Sympathy for the Devil" was the other one he brings up, which is also maybe a little, just a weird title to even.
The title, I guess, is weird. Yeah,
she's probably not at the point. Well, I don't know. Probably doesn't know who the devil is yet.
Maybe. I guess it depends on how religious you are, right? Do you bring up the devil if you're not religious? That's a weird thing.
Not really.
You don't, right? Yeah.
No.
Not to glance past it because, it was quickly mentioned, but you just brought up my favorite Rolling Stone song, which is "Under My Thumb."
It's a great song. Although I will say, I love the Rolling Stones even up into the early 80s. I think the Stones, I always think, people always have the Beatles versus Stones argument. I think the Beatles have better songs than the Stones up to a point, but the Stones have way more better songs because they were a great band for a super long time. And I think the Beatles stopped being a good band when they grew their hair long and stopped singing love songs.
I don't agree with that.
The Stones were more, I would say, consistent in their style, but I think that the Beatles are definitely the best songwriters of all time.
I want to chime in because I can't not chime in, but we don't have too much time because we need to wrap this episode up. But here's my take on that. If you look at their catalogs, and obviously the Rolling Stones have a much larger catalog because they were around for 50 years longer than the Beatles were. The Beatles, song for song in a 10-year period, have more hits than the Rolling Stones accomplished in 60 years.
I don't think that's
true. And also, their hit-to-miss ratio, as far as like legit, like bona fide singles versus like filler track, is way higher than the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones have way more unknown songs than known songs, where the Beatles, almost every one of their titles is something that is someone's favorite song.
Yeah, but when the Beatles went off the deep end and they were like, let's wear funny outfits and grow mustaches and fucking submarines.
They were still good. They were good songs.
But they rode that out till the end, whereas the Rolling Stones did that for one record and they were like, this seems kind of goofy, right? Can we just go back to being a regular rock band who writes songs? And then did that for another 30 years.
Well, you said wrote it out till the end, but it was like for like 3 years.
Right, yeah. But I hate those 3 years.
But we have to go past that because there is a little bit more. Unless Nick wants to chime in, right? I don't know if Nick has any more Beatles, Rolling Stone stuff he wants to add. I assume no.
Don't.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about wrestling instead?
Yeah.
I will leave this meeting right now.
So...
Fuck, there was definitely a wrestling Beatle, and I can't remember his name from the 70s in Memphis, and I'm going to have to find the picture for you later. He looks amazing.
I look forward to it. But so after he tucks his daughters in bed, he now enters his bedroom where his wife's sitting there reading, upset about the situation, and he's kind of looking at her, and he's trying to get her attention, and she's trying to, like, ignore him. And it was weird. So he's looking, then he walks over to his dresser, and he's emptying his pockets into on top of the dresser.
Wait, you skipped my favorite line.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
He goes, I didn't know if you wanted me to do the dishes.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't. I got a genuine belly laugh out of that line.
That was a good line. I'm sorry. I did miss that.
Also, he doesn't just put his stuff on the counter. They have like an electric change organizer.
Counter, yeah.
He puts all his change in and it like hums and vibrates and makes so much fucking noise.
Well,
it's so annoying.
At that time, did you guys have one? Because like that was like such a fad for a while. Like people were...
Yeah, I never had one.
I never had one.
It was such like... It was like mind-boggling technology at the time. Like
I spent all my change.
Yeah, I think as an adult it makes more sense because you have change at the end of the day and then you have more money. But as a kid, you're like, I have change. I want a Slim Jim. There goes my change. Now we're out of money.
Yeah. Some Paisan's bread.
Oh man, that bread was so fucking good.
When you're a kid, you go to like, the candy shop and they had like Tootsie Rolls for a penny and things for 5 cents and
gummy cherries.
I don't know how much this is aging us, but if you had 7 cents, there was a way to spend all 7 cents.
Yeah,
and
you could
would.
get 7 cents worth of candy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that ages us.
But I do agree we should outlaw the penny.
100%, yep.
The pennies, it's useless at this point, and it's just costing money. It's silly to have them.
That's a conversation for the chat.
That's a much longer conversation that we can't engage in. I kind of want to,
but we're talking about the 7
cents.
cents for the penny candy.
Yeah. We'll bring it up next week. We'll talk about pennies.
Sure.
Yeah, so as the change is going through that sorter, though, he's like giving her the most goofy, like he's so excited by the change thing working that he looks legitimately excited as he looks at her. Like I can't describe the face he's making, but it's like a jovial child.
Oh, slapping his tummy?
Well, that's next, because from there, he's like, well, that didn't work. The making a lot of noise thing didn't cheer her up. So, and the not doing the dishes didn't cheer her up. Now I'm going to take my shirt off and slap my belly. And this bothered me because he goes, well, I guess it's time for a drum solo. And then he goes, wipe out, and he doesn't do the wipe out drum beat.
Play it right. It's the most simple fucking drum line you could ever play.
Yeah, if you don't even have rhythm, you can do Wipeout.
I think that's a licensing thing. Like, you probably couldn't actually play Wipeout.
You could on your stomach.
I think you can belly slap it a couple
No, you'd be
bars.
surprised. A lot of these songs, like, when I listen to like the Office Ladies podcast and they'll talk about song mentions, sometimes just mentioning a song. Or like Michael Scott, when he bought the tickets to Sandals and goes like, he's saying just the one line from 2 Tickets to Paradise, that cost him $10,000.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it wasn't allowed, yeah.
That is the best money that Eddie Money ever made.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It worked though, because now whenever I hear that song, I sing "Leaving Day After Tomorrow." I can't sing the original words anymore.
Yep.
But I just don't, in this moment, just don't say Wipeout. Just hum some fake song,
Just do
some
literally
rhythm.
anything else, yeah.
Again, another weird rock and roll reference, like a weird old rock reference. That'd be
Yeah,
the Safaris.
It was a lot of that. There was, well, look, I mean, there was that, the Stones, Louie Louie.
No, I'm saying I
was-
like it. Like, I imagine if we ever have kids, right? Like, if your brain, you're gonna spill out the dumb shit that's in your head at your kids,
That's
just
true,
like your
yeah.
parents did to you. So
Oh, yeah.
I think that's believable that he's doing that, and I think it's actually a good move to be like, no, these are the things I would talk about because that's what I think about and who I am, right? So I do like it.
And we got to say, like, they probably don't want to blow their budget on Wipeout because they had to pay the Spice Girls right after.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
Because that, because that was his the encore after Wipeout was the, all right, we're going to slow it down with a little Spice Girls. And he goes, stop right there. Thank you very much. He's doing
He
this.
says seductive dancing, right?
Then he jumps into bed, and the way he jumped into bed was like, so, it reminded me of like an Always Sunny, like Mac as like Nightman, like that cat-like type.
Yeah.
He was,
It's like how you'd imagine Spider-Man would jump into bed.
yeah, he like snuck into his own bed, like he was like a thief.
This whole scene reminded me of the scene in Wayne's World in the first movie where Cassandra's on the phone and Wayne is just, he like puts his underwear as a thong and he like takes his shirt off. And he's, like, playing
When I
with
was a
his
kid,
belly.
I thought that was the funniest thing to ever happen in film.
But do you not see that in this scene? I feel like he's sort of aping that exact, it's the same energy.
It's in that vein, yeah.
The scene is very funny though.
And yeah, and now that he's in bed, he's trying to be a little flirty and talk to her a little, and he breaks down and he apologizes for what he did, and he's just explaining how it got to be what it was and what led him to pulling her out of the school. And it's just kind of like, I didn't want her to feel alone and scared, and we can't always be there. And he's going through this whole thing and mentions the whole situation in which he got dragged out of the school. And then the wife, who is warming up as he's explaining this, chimes in with the trick is to hold the lock on the locker as they're pulling you away. Which means she was probably in the same situation at that school before he was. And then this turns into the kind of the typical sitcom, like, all right, now he tells her how beautiful she is and stuff. And it's like the time to fornicate.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, you're beautiful, but then she's like, you're lucky.
The reach over to the lamp and turn the light off, and then he's on top of her and you can't see them anymore.
Nobody fucks with the light on TV. I find that so weird. Sometimes people have sex with the lights on. So many people have sex during the day. Like, do those people go get like blackout curtains and like try to make the room darker? Like, is it a weird, like, archaic thing? Like, do you not? I don't know. It's weird.
No,
to me.
I think it just goes to not over-sexualizing the scene, and
I guess it's easier in the dark.
But
yeah.
it happens in like a lot of like, not just like regular like goofy TV, but yeah, it's
definitely, you see it a lot.
And yeah, I mean, not to get too into it, I guess, but isn't part of being in that situation getting to see the person you're with sans their clothing?
Yeah,
like, isn't that part of the
mean,
fun
yeah.
of it?
Especially a husband and wife.
Yeah. Like, you get changed in front of each other. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it seems weird to like turn the lights off when you're noshing bits. I don't know. I don't get it.
Gordo, do you hide when you get changed? Like,
I do. I'm never nude.
Yeah, he's behind that little, that thing behind him. Yeah.
Yeah, you see this behind me?
yeah.
This goes right to the bedroom.
yeah.
Well, you just
Stop
that's what you can do a
peeking.
seductive dance for, Gordo. She can just see the silhouette.
Oh, I have a
Fucking going
seductive
anywhere.
dance.
Well, so as
I
the
can't
lights
show
go
it
out
here
and
because we'd be flooded.
Wait, I think I lost something here.
So as they're finally gonna engage in this fornicating, again the lights are out, and the button on the whole scene to end the episode is the whole, why would I ask you to close the car door on me? why would I shut the car door on you if you didn't ask? And it's just that back and forth.
It's dark and the credits are playing.
And that's what kind of goes on, and that's how the episode fades out, which is, I guess, good. I like a good callback to close things out sometimes. So, for those purposes, it worked.
I like a non-traditional just cut, like most sitcoms, especially of like maybe around that time too, where it's like the freeze frame and then cut to credits, right? I like that it's a different way of ending the show, at least. It's interesting. And it makes you feel like if you're watching this streaming and it was going to go right into the next episode, that seems so much more organic to then be like, and now on to the next story of this family,
Yeah. This kind of feels like it's good for like that like studio audience applause to round out the episode, like the end of a show, like a live show type of.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean that's it. That's everything I have for this particular episode. I don't know if there's anything else you guys wanted to bring up before we go on to the green light or cancels, but this is your time.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to bring up. I think we did 2 hours according to Jim, and I think that's probably plenty.
Yeah, I mean, the only other kind of footnotes I do want to mention, Dana, the sister in this episode, now married to country singer Brad Paisley.
Oh,
so, a little footnote there.
I wouldn't call him a country singer.
Okay, so the only other thing, Joe, we talked about the creators of the show earlier. I forgot to bring it up in the moment. I'm a little surprised. They were consulting producers on Thanks, which is
oh really
show that nobody knows about, but yeah, they were consulting producers on that show. Which, if you guys don't know Thanks, go back. We covered it for Thanksgiving last year because it was the only possible show that we thought we could do for Thanksgiving. With Cloris Leachman, it was a interesting show about pilgrims. Check it out. It's in the archives. Go back and give that a listen. So I did want to bring that up because it was. I don't know when else Thanks is ever going to come up.
I have one less button on it too. We talked about Courtney Thorne-Smith a bunch just because of other stuff she was in, but 2 other things to bring up that she's in, because one relates to the show. First of all, she's in Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise, as like the girl who goes to the island with them. And that is a great sequel. The Hotel Coral Essex joke is something I think about all the time. But she's also the Jennifer Jason Leigh role in the Fast Times at Ridgemont High sitcom. That was a failed sitcom that only lasted for like 4 or 5 episodes. And that's one of the shows I have in my like block of shows I want to do of movies that became sitcoms that nobody fucking watched, right? Right up there with the Animal House sitcom and a bunch of others. So we'll be seeing her again, I'm guessing, when we watch Fast Times. But I doubt we'll be watching any episodes of Melrose Place, unfortunately.
Not for this show, unfortunately. Yeah. Nowhere to go for to the green light or cancel. Only 4 of us because, for those of you who are paying attention, Ferg has never joined in on this episode. And to peel it back, because timing will be different once it's edited, we first meet for our Zoom call at 7 o'clock. It is now 9:30, and we have not heard from him. This will only be funny if he's not dead. If he is, it will make for a very awkward. But yeah, let's get into the green
But I will say,
cancel.
Gordo, at least you don't have to edit the over-talking this week.
Yeah,
True.
one less track. So that being said, guys, I'm going to start with Joe this time. Green letter cancel, according to Jim.
All right, so I actually wrestled with this one a little bit. This seems like a very much I would just greenlight it for everything I said about it being like just in its lane sitcom. But I also felt like it was just a little too predictable sometimes. But this is a case of we did the episode and my opinion definitely changed during it. When Nick and I had mentioned a little while ago where I was like, as we talk about it, there were a lot of jokes, a lot of things that actually landed. And does the pilot make you want to watch another episode? And the answer, honestly, is yes. I think this will be like a good, mindless in the background show that you get a few laughs out of. I don't think it'll be as funny as something like King of Queens probably, but I feel like it's in that same sort of wheelhouse. And that's a show that I watched all of, over pandemic and really enjoyed. So, again, I am a Jim Belushi fan, and I'm giving this the green light.
And someone who has big struggles canceling anything, but
I almost canceled this one for being too middle of the road, but then we all laughed about it.
Almost, but didn't. But
all right, well, I'm sorry. You give me shit. I gave your goddamn stupid caveman a green light. Back off.
Great show. Nick, on to you.
So yeah, I agree with Joe. I did come around on this show discussing it more than after I watched it. I'm going to cancel it, though, for one really simple reason. Well, before I explain that, I think Jim is really endearing. I do like his character among all the other characters. The other characters definitely need work, but I don't hate Jim. I think he is a good character. I think he can be funny. He's a slave to the writing like any character would be, honestly. I think I could see him getting better. My main problem with this show is the complete lack of desire to see the next episode. I could, give this pilot a green light, but if I'm really going off how badly I want to see the next episode, I have to cancel it because I know this show does get a little better. I've seen a few episodes here and there, like I said, when I'm at my mother's house, and I get laughs out of it. So I know it doesn't stay like this, but this pilot alone, I don't care about what happens next. Wasn't entertained enough. It was too simple. It needs more work. And I just was left wanting, a little more out of this episode. So I have to cancel for that reason.
Gordo.
So I am going to cancel this show. Mostly for reasons that everybody has said. Why I canceled it was that I, like Nick, just had no desire to watch a second show. But also, I'm looking at it from the perspective when I watch these shows as a green light or cancel. I'm sitting in a boardroom in California as an executive. Someone brings this to me and says, hey, boss, green light this or cancel it. What's your call? And I make my decisions kind of based on that. Like, is it boring? Is it good? Do I like it? And there is no real criteria, but it's just very generic. It was just a very generic show. It had some highlights like the vagina. That was kind of funny. But ultimately, I don't want to watch a second show. I got everything I wanted out of this. So cancel.
Yeah, for me, I gotta go with you guys. I'm canceling it also. And I don't know. I think I went in with a negative outlook at first, and we did talk about it, and there's a couple jokes that land. But I think throughout the 22 minutes, I don't think there was enough jokes that landed to really push me to want to keep watching. I thought there were issues with the characters. I think a lot of them fail to know who they are, and it is early to be fair. But between all of that and just non-relatable storyline and just a lot of the things that happen within it, it was shot weird, and that comes into play too. There's a lot of the shooting choices. Like I said, you could have cut out 5 minutes of the show just taking out reaction shots of people just smiling and grinning when other people said stuff. So ultimately it just didn't do it for me. I don't hate it as much as I felt I would going into it, but there wasn't enough meat on the bone for me to want to keep watching. I think Jim Belushi, at least from my perspective of this one episode, would be best suited as the second lead on a show, not the lead. I didn't think he was the guy you could really focus this whole thing around. And that being said, it went 182 episodes, right? But in the world of our show, it's not getting the green light, so it's not even going to episode 2. At some point, if Ferg ever shows up in life again, we will include his vote on the Instagram, which you can find at S1E1 pod. But regardless of a green light or cancel, we already have 3 cancels.
This was a very soft cancel. I would like to point that out. This is one of the softer cancels we've had. I feel like we all felt bad about canceling it. But when we did.
Well, that being said, guys, sorry to according to Jim, we are canceling you. And that's it. That's all the time we have for this week. Please check us out, S1E1pod.com. That's where you can go to find all the links to everywhere you can find our show, all our social medias. Please give them a follow. Rate, review, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. I keep stressing this. Please, guys, at least on Apple, if that's how you listen to us, go ahead and leave a review. We haven't gotten a review in a little while, so we would appreciate that. But to round it out again, thank you guys for listening. Catch you again next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
I think we got the best way too large bag of corn chips.
I thought you were going with, we got the best vagina.